Attorney General. COMA rules and guidelines include KR 16-20-1. Gail, could you please call the roll for us?
Yep. All right. Krista Amaro. Brandon Beck.
Present.
Thank you. Senator Rick Billinger. Thank you. Jack Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Representative John Carmichael. Tony Foster.
Present.
Thank you. Senator Marcy Francisco. Here. Thank you. Eric Harper. Here. Thank you. Jerry Harrison. Scott Hilbrink.
Present.
Thank you.
Gail. This is Jerry.
Okay, I'll get you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Kyle Hoffman.
Here.
Thank you. Katie McPhee. Jeremy Rabb.
Here.
Thank you. Doug Ritter.
Here.
Thank you. Jonathan York.
Here.
Thank you. Terry Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Jerry Daniels.
Here.
Thank you. Mike Daniels. Patrick Fusick. Thank you. Jim Jameson.
Here.
Thank you. Rob McDonald. Ken Nelson.
Here.
Thank you. Liz Phillips. Sarah Spinks.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Tucker. Okay. Michelle Abbott.
Present.
Thank you. Eileen Battles. Here. Thank you. Kathleen Becker. Here. Thank you. Troy Briggs.
Here.
Thank you. Scott Eckberg. Here. Thank you. Sherry Massey. Here. Thank you. Becky Snook. Here. Thank you. Braden Perry. Here. Thank you. Ellen Warnicki. Here. Thank you. Randall White. Present. Thank you. Is there anyone whose name I did not call or that I called and missed?
Representative Carmichael was here. He had to step out, so he'll be back.
Okay, I'll go ahead and count him. That will give you 13 voting members and 6 non-voting members.
All right, thank you very much, Gail, and I will let IT know. I'll try to keep this mic on when I'm talking again. But as everyone else here knows, I haven't seen you. It may or may not happen, so we'll give it the best try. I might change the order just a little bit because I know we've got some legislators that may have to leave for different meetings. So the only change in the order, I'm waiting on Kathy and go ahead to my report and would ask that Representative Hoffman brief us on the bill, where it's at, and we'll kind of let him take that role for now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did introduce the bill yesterday, but it is not out on the website yet because Nick is the reviser. He was making a couple of changes for me from the last revision. Some things that we needed to put in that we missed the last time. So I think it's ready to go. If he gets everything done by today and hopefully it will be introduced or turned in on the floor on either Monday or Tuesday. So then it'll become public on the website. So as it stands right now, in July of 2024, the council will have the authority to hire an executive director under the auspice of a new organization, a new state agency. Then that executive director will then be able to start helping the council through the process of getting ready for the changeover to a state agency. And then in July of 2025, the coordinating council will then become the board of 911 and will become a state agency. The sticking point that we were kind of at a little bit was the money part. We do not have any state agencies that have accounts outside of the state funds, and so there was a lot of angst about that. And so what I've done, and then we've got, so on one side we have bankers, the bank, and trust really doesn't want to lose $40 million just like that, you know. But yet we have this interest that we need to kind of balance out. I didn't want it to string along too long, but, so as it's written right now, the agency in 2025 will have the authority to leave that money in the trust bank until January of '26. And that will give time for everybody to get ready for, so it basically gives in trust almost a year and a half to know that this money is going to eventually be moved out. And it also will make sure that all bonds, things like that, have gotten sold, and so that it can be, everything can be moved into the, that's the way it sits right now. The bankers are fine with it, and I think the bankers are going to be supportive of the bill, and the budget director is okay with it. The caveat is that the council will have to send monthly reports to the Board of Administration and KLED, our legislative board, of transactions in that 6-month period, just so that they know what's going on in those accounts, and that made them happy. Now, at any time in that 6 months, as it's written, the board can move that money. So they don't have to wait till January of '26, but it gives them that 6 months to do it. That's the really major change from what is in anything that you've seen in the last. So then there's been some little things. Sherry's brought up some little things from the meetings and stuff, and I tried my best to incorporate everything that you guys had in the meetings you had, and to make sure that we got all that put in there. One other little change, as it reads right now, it said that the PSAPs had to, PSAPs have to report their spending. We want to make sure we change that to counties and PSAPs, because if a county does contract with another county, they actually aren't a PSAP anymore. So we want to make sure that that county that is receiving that money, that then they give it to another county, another PSAP, that they're reporting that to. So anyway, we'll see how that plays out in the. So those are the major changes that are not in the draft, I think, that I sent out. Other than that, the council stays the same. The council is, well, it's a board. It'll be a board now, but the board is the governing body of the 911, and just like it is at this point, the board will hire the executive director, and so it's not an appointee of the governor, and I did that on purpose because I wanted it to be hopefully as non-political as possible. When you have appointees of the governors, every time you get a new governor, you get a new appointee. Well, if you have the board is the one that is hiring the executive director, then you don't have as much turnover. And the governor appoints most of the board anyway. So, it's not like that it's outside of the governor's purview anyway. So that is, and we have other boards that are like that. We have boards that are, some of them that are governing boards and some of them that are advisory boards. And it all depends on whether or not the executive director is appointed or hired. And so this one would be a governing board. We added the county, the County Association of Counties, KEC, Kansas Association of Counties. They will get instead of just an advisory seat, they will have a voting seat now, and so will the municipalities. They will be a voting member also. Those are the only two changes as far as the voting membership. So I guess I can just ask or answer questions, I guess, if anybody has, because that's the major thing. So once I have had the the chairman of the Utilities Committee. He's actually the one that introduced it. He introduced it on behalf of Representative Carmichael and myself, and yeah, he made sure my name was first. Actually, he told me yesterday that he forgot my name and only put your name on it, so. No. It was introduced. He has said he will try to get it worked. I would say probably sometime here in the mid part of February is when he'll probably hear it and work it. And so hopefully, we'll have testimony and everything. I hope everybody sees this as a positive move. I really think it will be. I think it will add some stability and maybe a little bit less angst in some of the legislators in the fee and things like that. Another thing is that the audit, the 5-year audit will go away. So there won't be an audit every 5 years because basically the executive director will be coming before the legislature every year, for their budget. So I did run it through the budget director, and he has looked through the whole bill, and he says everything looks great as far as how it would transfer into the state agency. Another part on the money that I wasn't sure how it would work was the bill does not get rid of the LCPA. Now, it does change the LCPA's a little bit because it changes it actually back to what the LCPA was originally intended to be, which was the one that would receive the money and send out the money and keep that counting for us. So it does not change that. The LCPA will still be in force. The LCPA will still receive the money and send it out. I wasn't sure how that would work if it was a state agency and that money was within the state coffers. But the budget director said, no, we do that all the time with contracts. And so he said, that's not a problem. So, but that, like I say, that's not going to change until 20, somewhere around between 25 or July of 25 and 26. So before that would even change. The other reason I changed, I wanted to get it started, but I didn't want to rush it. So this also gives us another whole session. So we'll be back here in January of 25. If this passes this year, the executive director will be hired probably sometime in between that period of July 25 and January of 26, or July 24 and January of 25. But we'll be back here in January of 25 if we need to make tweaks to the bill too, to make that ease, or if there, some things that we see that, oh, hey, this was not thought out quite right, we need to change this. And so that gives us another session before it actually goes into effect. And so I'm not sure when the last time, this was done as far as a new agency like this was created. So it's new to me, definitely. We've had some merges, but I don't think we've done this in a while. So anyway, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Representative Carmichael. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Scott.
I understand July 1, 2026 is like the drop dead date. All operations funds would go into the state treasury as of that date.
Of January of 26. January of 26, yes. Everything, that's the drop dead. It's actually the first day of the legislative session in January of 26. Yeah. And the original bill had it that all the operating fund money would move in July of 25. But that left that, large part of the money actually and I was getting a lot of pushback from the budget director and all that. And I understand. I mean, they don't want to have a state agency have an outside account. And, so makes sense. And I will say too, one of the reasons why, and I don't think the bankers will care if I say this. If they do, they'll let me know. But They are, and I totally understand their point. They are frustrated that we as a state, we invest very little of our state assets into state-owned Kansas banks. And it's all because of the the way that that things have to be done with our investments. I don't totally understand all that, but there's a lot of people that do. And there is a movement, there's a work being done to try, and it probably won't happen until next year, and that's part of the reason for, another reason for the delay, in trying to make it easier and more beneficial for the state to invest in our Kansas banks. And really, that makes sense. I mean, I do wish that we were invested more in them, but it's all about the fiduciary returns and all that. And so if this bill goes through, it's very possible that Entrust, might not actually lose all that, because they may be able to still, they may be able to say, hey, we can give you this return on this, and they may actually end up with more, if that bill passes. So there's a lot going on with that, and that was part of the delay with, moving it out so that they have time to get that done. Because I think we have it's like less than, Representative Carmichael might know better, but it's like 10%, I believe, that we invest in of our.
I think that's approximately correct based
Yeah.
on what the bankers have told me. And it's part of a much broader concept to try all state money, to try to get as much of it invested back in Kansas rather than sending it to Synchrony Bank before they go broke in California or someplace.
Or Canada.
There you go.
Yeah, so, all right.
The concern that I have is we have some long-term bond investments right now that will not be turned out by July. You can't hear Scott. Of 26. The concern that I have is we have some long-term investments in bonds that will not be matured by January 1 of 26. So we stand potentially to lose money on those bonds if we have to sell them early. And I think that needs to be pointed out so the full council's aware that that's
Okay,
a potential.
Sure. So do you know when they'll be callable or matured?
Yeah, the longest term bond that we currently have, which was just bought recently, is 33.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that'll have to be something that's, that is talked about and maybe worked out through the process of.
Yeah, if I could add.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we're buying long-term bonds that don't mature until 10 years from now, we're telling the public that we're collecting money that we don't need. It's not going to be 10 years before we can get our hands on it. So we need to straighten out that kind of an investment policy no matter what we do, Scott. But can we get from the council, and you can obtain it from our financial institution, the amount of bonds that we have that would mature beyond the effective date of this, what they would anticipate the penalty or the discount for early sale of those bonds will be, so that we can see how much money is in question here. But I would strongly urge our investment committee, do not be buying 10-year bonds, because I don't know how we'd ever justify that to the public, that we've got so much money that we don't plan to spend it for 10 years. That's not the way government should work. That's a good reason to get this money in the pooled money investment board, Scott.
Any other questions?
I believe Jerry Harrison has a question. He's on WebEx.
Okay.
Representative Hoffman, I was just curious, does this change the term limits or anything like that for those of us that are seated right now?
No, it doesn't change the term limits, and it also allows for anybody to continue to serve even after their term is expired if an appointment has not been made. So they can serve until their appointment, a new appointee has been appointed. Either they've been reappointed or a new person, so that we don't have, because I know we've we've had that issue where we've had a lot of lapses and people have termed out and then nobody's been reappointed for a while. This would allow that person to continue to serve.
There are some boards and commissions that literally have people that have been on for 10 years and their terms expired a long time ago. But so long as the appointing authority is satisfied with their work, they don't appoint somebody new. What that does is it means once your terms expire, you serve at the pleasure of your appointing authority. So once I go over my limit, the leader can fire me at any time and send somebody else. But for now, I'm protected because I'm serving a term of office.
So my follow-up question would be, if we term out as representing one organization, can we be, under the statute, would we be eligible to be appointed under another organization, such as if a sheriff termed out under KSA, could they be appointed to represent KAC, or a chief, under KCP, be reappointed under the league?
Yeah, I don't see anything that would prohibit that. Don't know of anything in this statute that would prohibit it. Now, John, do you know?
Yeah, Jerry, I don't know the answer for sure to that. We can check through the revisor's office. It'll be easy for us to find the answer to your question. I'll make sure and get back to you, and then we can go from there. Because I don't know what the status of that might be.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
All right. Also have Patrick Fusick with a question.
On the working committee. I guess just to kind of follow up to Jerry's question, you mentioned it's a board not appointed by the governor, and then I thought you said that the members would be appointed by the governor. Can you just flush out what the appointment process will be going forward? Are they gubernatorial appointees or not? I'm a little confused on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that quite clear. The executive director will not be appointed by the governor. All of the other board members, except for us legislators, will be appointed by the governor, just like the current statute. That we didn't change that at all. So what I was saying was that the executive director will not be appointed by the governor. They will be hired by the council, and that makes them the governing board.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Sense?
That is clear. That's a little clearer than I heard the first time. I appreciate you.
Okay,
expanding.
sorry about that. Yeah.
No, you're good. Thank you, sir.
All right. Further questions?
Thank you. Marcy Francisco. So I appreciate all the work that's been done. However, in the Senate, Senator Mike Peterson read the legislative post-audit, and particularly on page 13, where it said there's the legislature should address the issue of contracts or counties, how that all works. So he worked with the revisor and took the language out of the bill that you've been working on and just made that a separate piece. So it's just the section on 125374 talking about the money. So he asked me to take a look at just this in particular. And we have references to money going to PSAPs. We have references for money going to counties. It's not really clear if you had a contract, who would be necessarily doing the auditing. So some of that may have been cleaned up, but I think it makes sense for the Senate to go forward with just this small piece of the bill. I think it's going to help, if the Senate gets the House bill, we'll be a little bit prepared for what's coming. And so I would be interested if there's anyone on the council that would like to work particularly on that. And I've, of course, picked Sherry to, and I think she's agreed to take that role. But if anyone else is interested in just how do the connections work between PSAPs and counties, particularly if counties are contracting with another PSAP? How would that all work? And so I hope you don't think we're treading on.
No, Mike came in and talked to me about it before he introduced it, so I think it's a good idea. One thing, that is an issue that we tried to address in this bill. There's even, I did make some even revisions. I think I mentioned it, that it said PSAPs reported. I changed it to counties and PSAPs to try to, but if the Senate's able to work on maybe that part of it, and we get this bill, in the end, they'll probably get merged and maybe the work that you guys do on it, where we don't maybe see on that part of the legislation will help, speed things along. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. It has not been introduced yet, but probably hoping to do that next week. But I'll work quickly on this, and we may, just to meet some deadlines, clean it up as much as we can. But I will be sure to share that with the full council and ask Gail to distribute it. So again, we'll have more eyes looking at it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, just for everybody, so they understand how this, I explained it. I mean, I know a lot of you do know how the process works. So once this bill, it's been introduced, it'll be turned in, like I said, Monday or Tuesday, and then it will go onto the website. It will then become an actual House bill. At that point, I can't change it anymore. It's done. It's changed, and it will then go through the process of the legislature. So there'll be a hearing on the House side. People can come in and say what they like about it, what they don't like about it, say, if we need to tweak this part or whatever, and then it'll go through the legislative process at that point. So that's the reason why I haven't turned it in, is because we were trying to make a couple little tweaks, but we wanted to get it introduced. So so that's how it'll work. Once it becomes public, it'll be on the website. It's set in stone, and for the legislature, it's set in stone as far as I'm concerned. And then it will, because I don't serve on that committee, so I'll have to, but I will be given testimony during the process.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yes, it was introduced in House Utilities. I would anticipate it staying in House Utilities. My intent, I'm pretty sure that that's the intent of the speaker also, but I will have a discussion with the speaker and hope that that's what happens. I feel like that's the best place for it. And the chairman of the utilities is very well of it, and so he's ready for it. We don't want it in approps.
I was just going to comment that I do serve as the ranking member on utilities, and I have amended my own bills.
All right.
I don't serve on that committee, so.
Well, I serve on utilities, and I know the chair is anxious to hear this legislation, and he's been a part of these discussions for several years, actually.
To that request by Marcy, any other volunteers to assist and look at that? I know there's other interested parties that may or may not be on the call today. There's a PSAP in the far reaches of Kansas out west that would probably enjoy being involved with that as well, since he's consolidated a few PSAPs as well.
Troy, I'd be interested.
Tony Foster from Douglas. Yep, Eric Harper from Cheyenne. All right. And I'm certain if anyone else would like to assist, I'm sure you would take them on as well. So we'll just have that noted so we can make sure that that group is together as well. Any other questions for Representative Hoffman? All right, hearing none, we'll try to jump back to the regular order. I've been in Topeka all week, so the herding cats theory really plays well. So I'm going to go ahead and seek approval for the agenda. so we can actually start our meeting per se. Anyone want to approve the agenda or make a motion? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Marcy Francisco. I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Any further discussion? Do we have a second?
Tony Foster, I'll second.
Tony Foster from Douglas seconds. No further discussion. Gail, could you please call the roll?
Approval of the January 26, 2024 meeting agenda. Brandon Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Rick Billinger. Okay. Jack Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative John Carmichael.
Aye.
Thank you. Tony Foster.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Marcy Francisco.
Aye.
Thank you. Eric Harper. Thank you. Jerry Harrison. Thank you. Scott Hilbrink.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative Kyle Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Jeremy Rabb.
Aye.
Thank you. Doug Ritter.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan York.
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous vote. All in favor.
All righty, thank you very much, Gail. We'll move on to, let's go back to, well, we'll actually need to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. That'll be the December 8th meeting of 2023. If everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes, would we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Jeremy Rabb, I motion we approve.
All right, Jeremy Rabb, Shawnee County makes a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Doug Ritter, second.
Doug Ritter from Meade County. Seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would take, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Approval of the December 8th, 2023 meeting minutes. Brandon Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Rick Billinger. Jack Brown.
Aye.
You, Representative John Carmichael.
Aye.
Thank you. Tony Foster.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Marcy Francisco.
Aye.
Sorry. Eric Harper. Thank you. Jerry Harrison.
Aye.
Thank you. Scott Hilbrink.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative Kyle Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Jeremy Rabb.
Aye.
Thank you. Doug Ritter.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan York.
Aye.
Thank you. That is also unanimous. All in favor.
All right, thank you very much. And I see Kathy knows what time of the meeting it is, so we'll move on to the LCPA report. Kathy Becker from Mainstream Nonprofit Solutions.
Get it? Tear everything's up this morning. I'm too short, my goodness. Kathy Becker with the LCPA. Want to go over the financials. The balance sheet is first. Does Scott, will you bring that up or okay. Basically, our assets are at $47.6 million. There's one thing I do want to point out is that the state grant fund is at $1.6 million almost, and we've got one more year left in the calendar year and the fiscal year. At $2 million, we need to start making those disbursements to the PSAPs. We get about $350,000 to $400,000 a year, so that probably will need to happen sometime in late 2025 or 26. Going next to in your packet, you have the summary sheet. Everything is within budget for a line item. There really are no concerns. A good job is done with all the management of monies and all the money that are spent. One thing I do want to point out is that we are over in interest income by $810,000 and over in investment income by 64. So totaling that up, I'm sorry, it's 383,000. We have interest income and other income that from dividends and investments of 1.2 million. So that is our income that we receive from all of our investments. Our operating percentage is at 0.87, which is well below the 2%, so we're staying within that. Really nothing else to report. Everything looks good. Do take a look at that back page where it talks about the state grant fund, and you will see that we have about $400,000 coming in. 335 of that is from the 0.0 that we charge, and then also the interest income. That's where the $350,000 to $400,000 a year came up on how much we put into the state grant fund. So we do need to start thinking about that. Besides that, everything looks good. We are taking bids for audit so that we can get audit to you a little quicker this year. Anything else? I will stand for questions. Oh, I do have something, one more thing. All of our bank accounts, we have 46.890619, or basically 47 million in all of our bank accounts and investment accounts.
All right, any further questions for Kathy? I would just make one statement. I believe ERC was wanting to take over that on the grant fund and kind of run those applications through there.
So we
And I
need to
think
get,
they're getting prepared to start that
Great.
process as well, so.
great, that's super. All right, thank you.
And since we collect it, we should probably use it and disperse it, so that's what it's there for. All right, thank you very much, Kathy. If there's no questions. All right, Executive Committee report. I don't have a lot. It's been very busy. We met just recently, but the app is kind of out and hitting the streets and starting to progress a little bit, so I'm excited about that. I am not one of the counties testing it, and I didn't want to do that because I am the chair, and I wanted to seem like I'm getting something no one else is getting because of a position. But when I try to explain how it works, I don't have it. So I now get to see what other people are doing. So and try to look at it that way. I'm excited about it as it progresses, and I think Sherry's starting to receive some feedback on that, and it was definitely, hopefully, will be a very good investment by us in that project. I do have another request. So Randall and I have spoke with the LCPA. Will be going out for RFP this year. That will require a little more of a lift, and I will probably be hitting some members up to assist with that. Both legislative and non-legislative, as we go through that process. So I will get with those persons a little later and let you know. That'll be again, another undertaking. The LCPA does not go away would not go away under what we're doing now, or if the bill makes its way through, it'll remain as well. It does change the face of it slightly, as they are a host of our personnel at this point. That would be, if the bill passes, that would change, and they would be agency employees and not employees of the LCPA. So it would definitely simplify that. Braden has a look of calmness as if that were to occur. It makes his world a little easier too. So any questions about that project at all? I will be getting with those members when we can. We do need to approve that financial report, though. I guess I'm skipping. The cat is running, and I will try to go through my checklist here, but if anyone would like to make a motion to approve the financial report.
Actually, I did have something that I forgot to say.
Okay. Go ahead, Representative Fox.
Yeah, I failed to mention this. One of the changes from the draft you guys saw, we had put in there that, right now, every county or every PSAP is guaranteed 60,000. We put 80,000 in there. We've lowered that back down to 70,000. So that is a change from, and I failed to mention that. That's a change from the draft you guys saw that will be in the final bill. So it'll be 70,000. So it goes up about 10,000, but we kind of felt like maybe 80 was a little too much to jump. So.
Thank you very much, Representative Hoffman. Motion to approve financial report.
Marcy Francisco, I move the council approve the financial reports as presented.
All right. Do we have a second? Representative Hoffman seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would seek a vote.
Approval of the LCPA financial reports. Brandon Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Rick Billinger. Jack Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative John Carmichael.
Aye.
Thank you. Tony Foster.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Marcy Francisco.
Aye.
Thank you. Eric Harper. Thank you. Jerry Harrison.
Aye.
Thank you. Scott Hilbrink.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative Kyle Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Jeremy Rabb.
Aye.
Thank you. Doug Ritter.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan York.
Aye.
Thank you. That is a unanimous vote. All in favor.
All right. Thank you very much, Gail. Now we'll actually move on to the executive committee report. As I mentioned those things prior, I've had some talks about 988 in the last week. Haven't really seen a lot of change there. They had a request on protocols, and when they were informed that we're delivering a call. As far as protocols, that's on a local level. But I think they're trying to work towards those entities as well to help with that. Scott?
We did provide information to them about which provider all of the PSAPs that are provided these days. I provided that to them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Representative Hoffman?
So I have are they working with our system, or is it a totally different system?
Yeah, it's just the public switch telephone network.
Okay.
They're routing calls that are dialed to 988 to the area code of the phone that's dialing it. So if you moved here from New York and you dial 988 in Kansas, you're going
Get New York. Okay.
So at this point in time, they're just using the PSTN.
So have they acted like that they're interested in trying to? Because I just don't want them I don't want another whole system built, is the thing. I don't think any of us do, so.
You know, at this point, I think at this point, I think there's a debate within 988 itself as to whether they want location information or not. I think the fear is that if someone calling 988 knows that they can track their location, maybe that dissuades them from using 988. So until they kind of settle on whether they want location information or not, I mean, I think there's a better way probably to route those calls other than area code, but, you know, until they solve that issue, I don't see them coming on to, but I think that the ESINet could handle it. I mean, it'd take some work to create two different routes out of the ESINet based on 911 versus 988, but I think it could be done.
Can I add to that? They do have an interest in the app because they have an interest in the safety of their police workers that go out in the field. So they feel like, you know, at least knowing where their location is, their last location. So they have expressed that interest for somewhere down the line.
Yeah, because that makes sense, because I thought the whole plan to, at the very beginning was that they were going to have like these what they call them, crisis response teams, yeah. And so if they don't know where they are, I'm not sure how they can route the crisis response teams. So, yeah, seems like that would be something that they would want to know, so appreciate it.
One other just quick comment there. I also serve on the 988 Council, and Michelle's right, they have interest in the app, but I also gave a presentation on the GIS aspects of what we're doing with 911, just so they would know, like Scott said, when they make a decision on how to implement geospatial, not to duplicate the effort we've taken here. So all the data with roads and address points and imagery and boundaries and all that, that we're more than capable and willing of handing that off or serving it up and however they need. So we have a wealth of info that they can use.
I would make a further comment. We actually had one of the 988 calls. It went to another state, and they figured out this person wasn't there. Not to denounce their professionalism or being worried about someone, but they don't get nearly as worried as if they're, you know, a state away. So having that geodata, they actually gave us a latitude and a longitude, and by weird chance, it went to an open field, so we knew she wasn't there. So it was very just beneficial, no real description, just an age and gender, and that was really basically it. And by just luck and virtue of small towns, we were able to make a determination, hey, I think someone moved from that state to ours recently that had lived here prior. And luckily, that was the case. Had that not been the case, and that wasn't even one of our people that figured that out, it happened to be a city worker driving down the street like, hey, you guys look like you're looking for someone. And so that's how that conversation went. But beyond that, I have the same concern, and then especially when those escalate, if we don't get geodata at the law enforcement center, then our response is incredibly limited as well. And I can't imagine Shawnee or Douglas, you know, with the number of people, or Johnson or anyone trying to figure out where that person is, and if they're actually now not just a danger to themselves but others.
Yeah, I'm not I'm not opposed to the, to the 988, but it does worry me that I hope that it's not been oversold to people, thinking that they're going to get this instant help, and it's maybe not ready there. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly a concern as well, because now having experienced one of those, and that's just a small place that's received just a few of those. I can't imagine some of the others. The other one that is popular that I could see some form of integration is the veterans, and they have a specific hotline, not 988 that they call, and it kind of tends to be the same thing. And that particular case had an address in a different town, but they thought that they lived, it just ended up in this big circle again. And by virtue of small town, we're able to figure it out. But beyond that, I don't know what would have happened. So how to make that work, I don't know. I think we've discussed technologically on our side it's possible. And I think we've offered that out a few times to 988. I think they have a lot on their plate. They were at zero and got a budget, and they started. And so trying to figure out how to make it work, the cart was definitely in front of the horse there a little bit, in my opinion. So, but hopefully we can reach out a little more and reoffer that we can make that work. Because I think we can make that work without them getting an address. And then when they forward that to us, potentially the law enforcement side would see an actual address, but it would keep the anonymity that they would like to have on the 988 side.
I would agree.
And I try to understand that part of theirs as well. But, I mean, at least we'll know they're in Kansas if it hits their line. All right. Council committees, we've had a little bit of change. Brandy Scott had some local obligations that she had to get more involved with and was not going to be able to continue on as our operations chair. I did speak with Jeff Ridgway, he's a director at Ellis County. And he has accepted that position and he'll begin right away. He would love to be on the call today, but he's was obligated otherwise. This conversation happened, I believe, Monday this week. So welcome him on when he's able to take part. And I'm sure he'll jump in with both feet, as I'm told, both by his local chief and the sheriff in that area. So in addition, with Becky moving to a staff position, that opened up the chair of Policy and Education Committee, and I'm happy to say that Eric Harper has accepted that. Love to see a council member in charge of that and moving us along. So welcome them on, and those positions are now filled. There are a few other items. I think in the issue of if I'm not available, if I leave, if I were to move on at this point, there's no real affirmative who takes the chair position in the intermediary. Being a KSA guy, I might have asked Sheriff Ritter to step in and chair those meetings when possible. So he's going to try to look surprised.
Were you going to discuss that with me?
It's not one. I believe voluntold is the.
I'll stay in my lane.
Yeah. This part's easy. You guys have the hard work. But just in the interest of succession, or if I cannot make a meeting, that's entirely possible at times. Try to make all of them, as many as I can, but we're all pretty busy as well. So we were fortunately, I said, we were in town all week up in the mag class through noon yesterday, so this was pretty easy. But other times it's just it could be a point where I couldn't be here, so I'll ask him to step into that position. So we have already formed the Finance Committee. I'm going to probably throw a little more on their plate as well. I even drew in a couple more legislative members in that LCPA process and in that RFP. I will be emailing those members, and it'll basically be one group making an advisory group of subject matter experts, and the second group would include someone from the state, and we would kind of make that final decision on the RFPs that we receive. Make that as open a process as we can and transparent as we can as well, but follow the guidelines of the RFP process. So that is it's going to be very timely. We would like to see that process probably no later than March 1st, but probably sooner. By the time the process, we receive them, we meet, we discuss. You throw in all of the holidays that happen in the year, and we need that position in place by January 1 if it were to change, especially because it's not as simple as flipping a switch from one entity to the other. In fact, it's fairly complex, and they would need probably, I think Kathy has mentioned before, probably 2 months, but it could be more than that. Yeah, closer to 3, Scott says, and particularly if it was an entity not familiar at all with how this works, in the weeds, definitely 3 months, and that might be stretching it. So we'll try to get that process started as soon as possible, get that RFP out, and we'll try to make that selection. So, all right. Any other questions for me? If not, we will move on. That is all I have. I have covered financial oversight. Let's go ahead and jump to Braden right quick. And what would you have for us?
Well, I don't have a lot. I've been following the legislation like everyone else. Obviously, we interpret the law, so we don't have to deal with making the law. So I'm sitting in the nice position of just waiting until that comes down to figure out how it will affect things moving forward. I know there's a couple of RFPs out there, but other than that, we haven't had any issues and remain to be called upon if needed.
All right. Any questions for Braden? All right. It looks like I've got Operations Committee. Ellen, could you brief us a little there?
Sure. So with the transition to Jeff as the new chair, there really hasn't been an opportunity for Jeff to engage with the Operations Committee to talk about the topics on the table, one of the big ones being smart transcription. So I would anticipate that discussion will happen this month or next month, and they'll be bringing that to the table in April. So that's really been the only thing happening with ops.
All right. Thank you very much. I know there's definitely some things picking up on that end, so we look forward to Jeff jumping in and taking part in that. But we definitely appreciate Brandy for her time that she spent on there as well. And we appreciate all of us in here. Things that happen in personal life, and then staffing is always a fun adventure for everyone. So we appreciate all the work that's been done there, and Ellen, you helping kind of herd those cats per se in the right direction. So thank you. Expenditure Review Committee, Chief Harrison.
Thank you, Sheriff. The only update I have is we've started reviewing expenditures. We have a couple of questions regarding that the committee is trying to work out regarding late fees and interest payments. So we're discussing that and going back to our PSAPs for more information. The biggest takeaway for me is that I want to keep this as easy as we can on the liaisons and on the PSAPs. So for those directors or people that are submitting those bills listening, be sure and explain real briefly how this item connects back to 911. You can't just put this is a special circuit. We need to know, is this a special circuit that connects 911 calls to another agency you transfer them to, or why are you paying for a CAD bill or rather an RMS bill out of 911 money? We need that 911 explanation. I think Ellen has probably well over 24 phone calls she's going to have to make to follow up on things, and that just draws the process out unnecessarily.
All right. Any questions for Jerry? Anything else, Jerry?
No, Sheriff, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Having one of those PSAPs underneath myself, I know we will look through ours for the year, and we're going to have to do some calling and begging forgiveness as well with some missed keys. So those genuine things do happen, but sometimes it's an interesting, for everyone that hasn't been involved with it, Jerry really explained it very well. It can be interesting, the expenditures you see come in and the reasons for them. And we do pay for some things you would think are not applicable, but they can be, but there's other ones that are pretty simple, like paying for jail software. Yeah, the 911 call resulted in that person being incarcerated, but that's not really how that money's, might be a stretch. But having sat on there for some time, you do see that here and there, so definitely. So, and as technology changes, that committee's been very stressed because there are more connections that you potentially can try to justify. So we appreciate that work. We know it's a lot. How many, Ellen, do you know how many you end up looking through? Maybe you don't even want
Total
to say the
for
number.
the year? I can, during my report, I'll tell you how many we've went through so far.
Okay.
So-
All right. We will wait for that. All right. Move on to Policy and Education Committee. Eric is super new as of today. So, but Becky, would you have anything to pass along for us on that?
Yes, so we really haven't done much since our last meeting, just because of transition of myself becoming staff and kind of waiting to see where it was going to go with the new leadership. I'm very happy that Eric is going to take that over. He's very capable and has been a part of it. So I'll be handing off with him. We'll do a meeting kind of as a regroup and then let him take off with it as needed. We've been working with the LMS system, getting that up and going and getting corrections made and that kind of stuff for the PSAPs to be able to start using, as well as working on the text to 911 update video for training. I think it's in the final stages for approval before we get that uploaded. And that's pretty much all that I have. So good luck, Eric.
I'm not sure if that was a good omen or a bad one, but I'm sure you'll do fine. So, anything from you, Eric?
No, I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. I'm up to Ken and Eileen with the GIS committee report, unless someone has something else for Pub Ed. All right. Eileen,
right.
looks like you're up to bat.
Thanks,
Ken.
sir. I'll take the first half. Eileen will take the second half. Just real quick on data submissions, these continue to go really well. This is the gas in our engine, so to speak. For Q4 of last year, our last reporting quarter, we had 99 submissions that passed QA, 8 PSAPs reporting no changes. So again, we're kind of the envy of the nation in terms of data quality and the amount of interaction and data submission we have across the state. So that continues to go well. Before long here, probably end of February, early March, our vendor Certex will begin putting planes up in the air to acquire imagery. Again, conditions need to be right. No rain, no snow, no ice, no flooding, no clouds, no wind. So not today, but sometime. Somehow they get it done. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be showing you status maps on what they have acquired so far. So go ahead, Eileen.
Representative Carmichael.
Yeah, just a
sorry,
quick
sir.
question. Is no leaves a requirement, or do we want it with leaves? I'm just kind of curious, which is preferential?
It's a good question, and it really depends on use case. For our use case, no leaves is kind of a stretch, fewer leaves. You know, so that window we're trying to get where the leaves haven't started to bloom out yet, but there are some trees that really don't drop a whole lot of leaves throughout the winter, so it's just trying to minimize that so you can see through to the ground. We do have a whole host of other imagery that's collected by the USDA. It's called the National Agricultural Imagery Program, NAEP, deliberately collected when leaves are on the trees because it's used for ag purposes, and the monitoring that you can do, that they do with that imagery, they want the vegetation to be growing at that time for that purpose. So it kind of depends on your use.
Thank you for satisfying my idle curiosity.
You bet.
And I believe, Ken, they're using new technology this year.
Yes,
Might
we have
give us a little better resolution.
Yeah, a new camera system. We got to see samples of it. So same resolution, 1 foot, natural color infrared, same specifications in terms of horizontal accuracy. But the samples we got to see, and we had our committee review it, the pictures seem much more crisp and vibrant. So same specifications, but the overall quality of the photos, I think, will be better than what we've had. So.
I think one other thing we discussed the other day was just there's been some cost sharing sides to this. It's not us footing the whole bill, and with what the bill is, we actually, how we share that out is I'll
We
let you.
we share it out a little bit. I'd like to share it out more widely, honestly, but we've had cost share from KDOT through the Traffic Records Council on the 2018 and 2021 project. I'll be submitting a request into their process here that will begin, I think they'll go over those proposals at the February meeting for $100,000 in cost share. That's been what they've kicked in on previous agreements. I think that's another issue for us to try to tackle is trying to get more cost share into this from other state agencies. They are users. Trying to get cost share is a little challenging at times. Certainly, we do use it extensively for 911 and great return on that investment, but I would like to see the cost shared a little more widely than it is right now.
Definitely, and legislators can probably opine to paying for one thing with tax money from other tax money isn't necessarily the most desirable, but definitely those entities that are utilizing it pretty heavily, to see that return is great. Senator Francisco.
Thank you. So I'm wondering if it might be possible to give legislators or perhaps the whole committee some more information on what other agencies you believe are using this, because if we talk to them in their budgets, it's one thing to just say everybody should cost share,
Right.
but if you don't know, is it the Department of Transportation? Is it?
Absolutely. I'd be
Okay.
happy to pull that together for you, deliver it at the
And we'll-
next meeting or before? Before?
I think it may be too late in the budget
Okay.
process right now. So next meeting, I think, should be
Okay.
fine.
I'm not on the budget committees. I don't touch money.
Yeah. I'll collect that as quickly as I can for
Well,
you. And
I think the appropriate time would be to give this information to the governor and her budget director when they're setting the agency budgets. I think right now, that would be hard. So we have time.
Okay, great. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcy. Any other questions? Ken, go ahead. Or are you ready for Eileen?
Ready for Eileen?
He's
Eileen's
handing
up
it
to
off
bat,
me.
okay.
It's funny, you talk about imagery, that's Ken's favorite discussion topic on return on investment, so you hit a spot there for him. So continuing on the GIS committee report, we continue to participate and advise in everything rapid deploy, whether it's the radius call handling map that the telecommunicators use, or even the new Lightning mobile application. We participate in those calls with the developers to talk about the GIS data integration and any future needs or configurations that we might want to consider. So we really appreciate being part of those discussions. For the program portal, I feel like that's just ongoing development with the program portal. There's always just little tweaks and things that we need to do to make maybe the presentation of the information or the access or the reporting tools better. And of course, been involved in migrating the liaison with bringing Becky on and giving her full access and onboarding and transitioning some ownership of documents and things like that. There's always just kind of behind the scenes things going on with the portal, because it contains so much content now. The toolbox, the GIS toolbox, that's been a steady, great way for the locals to validate their data since really the inception of this program. And there's a known deprecation schedule for one of the desktop packages we use in GIS called Arc Desktop. So we're discussing, Will in our office is working on developing probably a second toolbox to support what's called Arc Pro. So it's just another GIS package developed by Esri, but it is a transition for our GIS maintainers to move from one package to another. So we want to make sure we're supporting them and providing the tools that they need for whichever version they're in at the time. So working on that as well. Outreach and communication continues. We do our quarterly user group meetings, continue to provide training to our GIS data stewards and data maintainers, and in person at the Kansas Association of Mappers Conference, which is in the fall every year. We're also been working on the Kansas GIS Data Model version 3. So we always want to make sure we're staying in alignment with the NENA federal model. So we're making sure if there's any tweaks or adjustments, generally no major changes, but we're our own best critics. So we're always like, oh, we need to adjust this or make this more clear. Or as questions come up, I feel like we're adding more content and explanations more than just adjusting the standard. So working on that.
those modifications and hope to have that out and published here pretty soon. And then also continue to work with all the data aggregation and transitions and submissions we do on behalf of the council for whether it's to Entrado or AT&T or just to support other state agencies as well. So with that, any questions about GIS?
All right. Scott.
I know that historically you've reached out to other states have reached out to you. Do you have an update on that by any chance?
Thanks for that
You're
question,
welcome.
Scott. I forgot to bring that up. So we do really enjoy talking to other states about 911 because everyone's at different phases of this project. And recently, we were contacted by the state of Wyoming, their GIO, asking, we've had a meeting with her as well as some follow-up information asking how we have the GIS architecture set up to support 911. So we've had discussion with her, and we've also shared some materials with her specifically to, the way the cloud configuration is set up and our VMs and all that, the services and things like that. So it's just a great relationship to kind of share stories. And I think they're at the point where they're trying to decide if they're going to take that on and try to do it in-house, like some at the GIS department in the state, or if they're going to use a vendor for that. So we always learn a lot talking to the other states, no matter where they're at with 911. And I'd like to share that information with them as well. So.
I had one other, and it's Oklahoma. We now share Coffeyville, Kansas, actually dispatches calls into Oklahoma. It's probably maybe one of the only scenarios in the United States. I mean, I'm not really sure on that, but it could be. But Oklahoma's GIS data was a very different position than ours. But I think, at least for Nowata and that area, they've now have good data. Could you explain a little bit about that process and what happened there?
Yeah, so we are communicating with all of our surrounding states because at this point in the map, the surrounding state data, we just pull in what's called the U.S. Census Tiger data. So it's roads and some content, but it's not as good as, local authoritative data. So we've contacted our colleagues in Nebraska and Oklahoma because they're to the point where they've actually developed their 911 data, validated it, and have it ready for distribution. And we're working on pulling that into the radius map. So that you should see, especially if you're in the border counties, you should see an improvement on the roads and address points and really more concentrated 911 data for the surrounding areas. So yeah, we're always looking and talking to them, and I know they've given us access to their portals to be able to just go grab that GIS data as we need it to update that content, and always keeping our eyes on. We have a new contact with the Colorado GIO as well, so and Missouri, so we're always kind of keeping an eye on them as well to be able to pull in that better authoritative data once it's available.
Just one quick thing, Eileen, if you could add to the BIOP aspect of the imagery and how that benefited Nowata as well.
And another aspect of that. So the vendor that maintains the data for Nowata County and the adjacent county contacted us and said, hey, can you add imagery for Nowata County, Oklahoma into the radius map? It seems like a pretty simple question, right? But we didn't have any imagery at the resolution that we have for the 911 Kansas imagery. So with an imagery service, you can't really mix 1 meter resolution and 1 foot resolution. It gets just really messy. So we're like, well, we'd love to bring that in, but we really need imagery at the same resolution. They didn't have any available. They were trying to decide if they could purchase that through the state. This didn't seem to be working out, or at least in a timeline they were satisfied with. So we were able to get a quote from Surdex, who does our imagery acquisition for the state. And it was a really great deal for Nowata County just to join in our statewide acquisition. And they've agreed to that and signed the contract. So Nowata County, Oklahoma will also be acquiring imagery at the same time we do the 2024 statewide imagery acquisition. So when you look at the map, you'll see the state plus this little county hanging off in the end that'll have their imagery on there as well, which is great. It'll be same resolution and easy to seamlessly integrate into our map.
All right, thank you. And I think from a responder aspect, probably not as much the law enforcement side, although it does definitely happen, but fire especially ends up in border states a lot. Sheriff Ritter and I, where we're at, you end up in Oklahoma and they end up in our way, and it'd certainly be nice to have updated imagery to know where you're at and try to track your people as that works. I know where I live is extremely flat, where he lives isn't as much, but you get into Oklahoma and they have like trees and hills and stuff in the same place. There's even water. Find it crazy from Haskell, but ended up in Oklahoma a couple of times, and just being able to see the terrain you're on at night in a fire becomes really important, and asset tracking and making sure those people are safe. It's tough. It's nothing worse than being in thick smoke and not know if there's a drop off or a ravine or something of that nature. At least give you some ability of awareness. So that's great. Scott.
Just to be perfectly clear for everybody here, Nowata County's paying for that imagery. The council is not.
All of them. Which brings up one of my favorite map discrepancy reports when telecommunicator reported that they'd built a new building, so could we update the picture? To let them know that was on. I was like, we will. It just takes a couple of years to get that done, but I love it's getting reported and noticed. So, all right, any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen and Ken. All right, we'll move on to Technology and Security Committee. Sherry Massey.
Thank you. There are quite a few little statistics that are in the circulated technical report, but I just want to highlight a few of them, particularly the move to the AT&T switch to Ethernet. We are down to the last 5 locations for that. And those are holding for connectivity for circuits, because in some places in Kansas, it's very hard to find 2 diverse broadband circuits. It's just kind of the way it is. But we are really hoping to have that all finished up by April. The last of those is currently scheduled in March. We can't guarantee, of course, that the company will come through in a timely fashion. It's an outside company, not AT&T, but this has been kind of a long process. As you guys all know, you've been hearing about it for a long time, so to have an end in sight is nice. The Technical and Security Committee met earlier this week, in fact, and talked about a couple of things. An update on the Secular project, so the network monitoring, and I wanted to give you guys the same update. The Paladin devices, which are the devices that collect the traffic from the network and allow it to be analyzed by the operations center at Secular. The Paladin devices have been installed at all 3 hosts, but there have been some configuration issues. And those configuration issues are related to the fact that we have a sort of unique setup with both rapid deploy and our voice network and all this kind of thing. So while we are getting reports on the voice network and they look great, there's no indication of any problems. The reports are not the complete package that we were hoping to see. And so efforts have been underway for the last few weeks to get that adjusted. And as soon as some small pieces of hardware that are needed at each of the host sites to make that happen, as soon as those come in, which should be shortly, we should be able to get that all cleared up. So we're waiting until those reports, and until that configuration issue is fixed and until those reports are complete, before we bring in Secular to talk with the Technical Security Committee and with the council about the results of their baseline testing and what we're looking at going forward. So I just wanted to be sure everybody understood that we are receiving information. We're just not ready to talk about it yet because we're not going to have a full benchmark until this configuration is fixed.
Sure, Ed, just a
Certainly.
quick point. I learned this some time ago. We get our feed from AT&T, but actually the call voice is received just on Vesta, the Motorola side. Rapid deploy is mapping, and they are separate. There is completely separate. So unless you make a call go to video to 911, you will not get voice just out of Vesta, which is something I've been banging around about wanting that to be a possibility. And I know that's, I'm not asking you when that's going to happen or anything,
Right.
but that just for the council's edification that they're very separate pieces with a feed all from AT&T. and subcontract underneath AT&T.
Well, and there's a reason for that. So the traffic on the voice network, just so that everybody kind of understands what this issue is, the traffic on the voice network is voice. It is the 911 call, and that is it. It is the back and forth, whether that's taking place initiated by the caller by text or initiated by phone, and the communication back and forth there. And there is literally no other traffic on that network. The logins of the telecommunicators, the logouts, and those phone calls. Rapid Deploy, by its very nature, the Radius product is a hub for data from all kinds of sources, from mapping data that comes from us at DASC, or the 911 calls coming from Vesta, or the information coming from OnStar, or any of the other sources that we've kind of talked through here. And over the course of the next few years, we're going to be talking about a lot more potential sources that we're going to be bringing to your attention so the council can vet, especially with Lightning. But all of those data sources, no matter how hard the source tries to keep that data clean and discreet and the feed good, they are risk factors. And we don't want that traffic on the voice network. We don't want anything to potentially interfere with the 911 call. And that's why all that rapid deploy data is awesome, but is on a completely separate network. And the actual distance, both theoretical and physical, of that is the configuration issue that we ran into with Secular. Because those are not just networks by program, separate networks by programming. They're actually separate hardware, and that wasn't quite anticipated when they first sent us devices. So,
Thank you very much.
Okay, and that kind of leads into Lightning, which is the other thing that we discussed on the Technical Security Committee. And before I discuss the project itself, I want to thank the members of the Technical Security Committee for sitting through a demonstration of what goes on with Lightning, and then a discussion of what their role might be as an advisory group to the council going forward. So the pilot project for Lightning began this Monday, the 22nd. We began communicating with PSAPs last week about how they could add users for Lightning. These are the 14 PSAPs that are part of the pilot program. And starting on Monday morning, we sent out the download link for them to be able to get into and install on their phones the Lightning app. There have been some questions that come up. Monday was a little bit of a harrowing day. Everything was sort of fine on the Lightning side, but the PSAPs were not able to see it in Radius like we wanted them to. That was also a configuration issue that Rapid Deploy had to take care of on the back end. But I would point out that as soon as we notified them, they scrambled all their jets, if you will, and had their engineers on the task. And we had 2 issues come up over the course of the day, and each of them independently was solved in less than an hour as their engineers figured out the problem and got it adjusted. That's why we do a pilot, though. And they are looking very closely at what is going on. They are tracking all of the traffic of how our logins are working, if our PSAPs are able to see what they need to see. And so far, things are going well. We have had a few questions. We have had some people that, some end users who were hoping for more, I guess, dynamic functionality. But as I explained to one of them, you know, if you're the only person at your organization that's using the app, there's no one else to see on it. And if you don't have a 911 call right now, there's nothing to view. It's just a map in your location. So, you know, there is going to be a little bit, because we do have varying levels of traffic at different parts of the state. For some organizations, it's going to be a little while before they really get to play with all of the different features in a live environment. But like I said, I believe it's going very well. We do have a website up that includes forms for reporting issues, for asking questions, and for learning how to use the app that has been released to all of the responders that are taking part in the pilot. So we do have some questions and some issues that have been reported through it, so I'm glad to see that. And we're consolidating all of that, dealing with those as they come in. So, so far, as early as it is in the project, I think it's going very well.
Sherry, I think Representative Hoffman may
I'm
have a
sorry.
question before we go too much farther.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. I think you answered one of them, but, you know, we here at the state, we are hypersensitive right now about cybersecurity. It's very, very, I don't know. Seems like every day we get another. But I think you answered the question. It sounds like that our call handling, our voice calls, would be very hard for anybody to actually ever really get into to disrupt through any of these other apps that we're using because they're separate networks.
Yeah, Lightning does not in any way touch the Vesta call handling
Yeah,
network.
and that's great to hear, because that's, you know, if someone can get, you know, gets into this and messes up rapid deploy and all that, our 911 system will still, and so that's reassuring.
Well, and I'm going to kind of tag on to something with that we have been talking about at DASK from the GIS data perspective, because the map used in 911, which is used to locate cell callers, you know, where the information's coming in as a coordinate and not, you know, easily determined by a human what that actually means, it is considered a very high security service. We do not want to see any kind of denial of service attack or anything that might bring that map down. So even though it's not connected to the voice network, that has a different priority for us than the map that would be served up in Lightning. So what we've been talking about internally, and I hope Ken doesn't mind that I'm speaking on his behalf here with it, but what we've been talking about internally is doing completely separate map services for that very purpose. One, super secure with all of the limitations and restrictions that we can possibly put on it that would be used for call handling, and one for Lightning that we still want to work, but if it goes down is not of the same priority.
Right, okay, great. And then last question on the 12, my computer just blacked out, but on the 12, I assume that you've kind of got them, you know, like a small, a medium, large, to try to kind of see how the traffic is going to be depending on the different aspects of their size.
Absolutely. So we requested applications from anybody that wanted to apply. We invited applications from anyone. And the ones that were selected for a few reasons. We have a rough, even split of agencies that are law, fire, and EMS, because we wanted to know, you know, how does it work for each of them. We have a few PSAPs that have all three of those going, and a few PSAPs that are only doing one of those things. And then we also have a size range, or at least as much as we could get volunteers for. But we also have a size range. We have Douglas County and Riley County are part of that. We have several counties that have a very small user base that are associated with it, and we have a variety there: police, fire, EMS, and combinations. So we selected the ones we selected to try to get as broad a group as we could, so that when we go statewide, whatever that looks like, when we do that, we can make the best recommendations to people possible about what we've learned from the pilot.
Great. Jeremy Rapp.
Sherry, back to Secular and Paladin. Do we have a good feel on how quickly we would be notified or receive a notification should something be detected by that monitoring service on either of the networks?
So the Security Operations Center that Secular runs is a 24/7 operation, and they have traps looking at our traffic all the time. Our understanding in conversations is that they would notify us immediately, and by us I mean that they'd call Scott and I as soon as they saw something, and then more formal reports would start going more broadly. Right now, we're getting general reports on a weekly basis, and we always will, but those are without any alerts. You know, this is what's going on right now, but the alerts themselves should be, as soon as they identify them, they're communicating with us.
Great, thank you.
And they'll notify AT&T as well.
Yes.
Perfect.
Tony Foster.
Sherry, we were talking about two different map services as a potential down the road. Currently, right now, it seems like every piece of software that comes out is a new map. Is this two services that are going to congregate onto one map, or are we going to have to deploy a secondary map for this?
It's two servers running right now. The plan is two servers running the same map. It's just that they're going to be running them in sort of different security level environments. And this comes because the responders' mobile devices don't have static IPs that we could whitelist through a firewall. So we have to accommodate giving them the data without the stringent firewall rules that we use right now for Radius. That said, we do know that there may be some stylistic differences that become required as people begin using Lightning. They may say, hey, the colors you're using for these lines or how thick they are or how much data is on here is not right for us in the field. And so we know that there could be a separation in what those maps look like because and as anybody who's put MDTs out or anything like that knows, you have concerns about what happens when the sun is there. It changes how you view a screen. So we know those things might change, but our intention right now is that to the end user, they should look like the same thing.
But you would not have to have both maps?
No, not at all.
The data that you're seeing on your Radius map would be duplicated on the app map that's being accessed by the mobile devices.
I guess that was my concern, is if we had to have a secondary map, a lot of PSAPs would be asking for a third monitor.
Yeah, not at all.
That would be, more expense and everything else down the road, so.
No, and that's one of the things that we're considering when I talk about the idea that a mobile map might look different. Part of the concern about making it look different is that communication piece. Lightning is a common operating picture. If I'm looking at the same map that you are, you and I can communicate more effectively about what's there. If on my map, something different is bright and easy to see than what is bright and easy to see on your map, then you and I begin to not be able to communicate as effectively. So we don't want that. We want that common operating picture. So that's why the maps are identical now, or I should say will be. We're putting all of this together, but right now Lightning is showing Google and Apple Maps. We anticipate here in this first quarter that the local maps will be present on it. But at that time, it'll be an identical map until we can very gently and with as much a discussion with the user base as possible, make any changes they need.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've spoke about this a lot, the staged bringing up of this being at a smaller level. I mean, they've identified a couple problems and it affected very few versus turning the switch on and
drowning.
And drowning. Yeah. Sure, drowning for sure. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the last thing that I kind of wanted to hit upon with the app is to come back to the technical security meeting. So as I mentioned with Radius when I was talking about the dual networks for voice and rapid deploy, Radius and Lightning are hubs for data. Data that you can present to a telecommunicator, data that you can present to a responder, and there are a lot of potential data sources out there. Rapid Deploy right now on other customer bases has the ability to put through panic alarms, for example, from some sources. We don't do that in Kansas yet because we are working towards kind of getting a stable platform, and we got to have a conversation about what does that look like? Is it every panic alarm? Is it every PSAP? Who do we want it from? Just one of the problems when I talked to them about how this works, just one of the problems that they brought up is not every panic alarm company uses good coordinate information. You know, they might have just ballparked it or did a quick Google search and called it good, and they aren't entirely certain of exactly what that coordinate is. Well, we don't want that on our map. We want to find a way to help them vet that. I mean, there's a whole question mark here of putting good data versus just putting data. So part of my ask for the Technical Security Committee was, can you help with that process? So we can find data sources, we can talk about how to do it internally, either as a council staff, as a GIS team, as the working group for Lightning. But will the Technical Security Committee vet the source just to go through and not judge whether or not a responder needs the data, but judge, is the source reliable? Is the format interoperable? Are these kinds of things, from a technical perspective, is this a good idea? So that recommendation, whatever they make, yes, no, or maybe, can then go along and join with a recommendation from ops or the Lightning Working Group or whomever to come to the council as to whether or not we purchase or allow or use resources to format data sources. And I was very pleased a couple of the committee members spoke up quite vocally that they thought that was a very good use of their time. I believe I'm quoting one of them there. And so that is one of the standing agenda items we'll have on the Technical Security Committee is data sources that might potentially come to Radius and Lightning.
Representative Carmichael.
Thanks. Apologize for my naivete. We say panic alarm. Are we talking about an officer's radio, or are we talking about a help, I've fallen and can't get up?
Either, actually. And that's kind of the communication concern there. It could be anything from...
And I can clearly understand why you'd want to differentiate between some types of panic alarms then and perhaps others.
Right. And the council...
The one when my dog goes missing, maybe we don't need to put it
right
on.
Well, and let me give you an example. I spoke with one company that handles some school alarms, and they have alarms all over a very large school building. That's what we were talking about. And I was just trying to kind of get an idea, a feel for where we were at. And I said, great, what are the coordinates that are programmed into those alarms? And the answer was that all over this school complex that covers most of a block, every one of the panic alarm locations is programmed with the GPS coordinates of the main address of the school. That is not helpful. If they program every one of those alarms with the coordinates, the physical coordinates of the alarm or the room it's in or whatever, depending on their format, now we're giving useful information to a responder, especially if we have that and go, okay, now can we get a floor plan that maybe we could superimpose on the map? And you could see, at least at the last time somebody updated that floor plan, which room this is going off in. That's useful. But that's a whole vetting process. That's a whole set of rules, maybe even policies the council has to set, and certainly that local PSAPs have to set about what data can come into these systems and what can't. If you put too much in front of people and it is not useful, they will quit looking at it, and the value of the entire system drops.
I think we have input from Board of EMS with AED locations.
Yep.
But the same process, where are they at? Well, the general address doesn't help you if it's a block
right.
school. Even these smaller schools, that'd be an issue. So I think Director Rabb is, Silver Lake has a panic, but it's worn. Yep.
You have one about 6 inches below your hands there. Don't push
Yeah, don't push it. Gets exciting. I'm going to walk out that door.
There, so don't play with it.
Yeah. Great. Tony Foster.
Sherry, I know that it seems like it's an industry trend right now that a lot of these companies are starting to consolidate and starting to get ate up by other companies, and then all of a sudden they're providing the same service. So then you have this kind of, what hat are we in, and are we going to be able to get data from these other companies? Has there been discussion amongst, say, Rapid Deploy, Motorola, these large companies, to share that data? Because that might be a consideration of where we go in the future.
So yes, there's a lot of integration talks between Rapid Deploy and data sources, and probably the best example of that is OnStar. All right, OnStar is coming in. That was a talk between Rapid Deploy and OnStar. It wasn't our request or any other customer. And similarly, now Bosch comes in with telematics, same idea. That was a negotiation between Rapid Deploy and Bosch, and I know they have a lot more negotiations going on out there. But one of the things that they have, we have not turned it on, and we have a lot of vetting to do before we ever would, but one of the things that they have is an open protocol, an open source protocol for delivering data to the PSAPs. It's the same one that's used for iPause. Many people in here might have heard of or seen iPause. That is how alerts hit iPause, is through a protocol that's called Community Alert Protocol that is approved by FEMA. And they have the ability to receive CAP messages. Anyone can format a CAP message. There's not a huge technical lift to this, and transmit one. So while, yes, Rapid Deploy is working with a lot of companies for integration, most of that is going to require at some point a subscription, whether it's a subscription by the public or a subscription by the PSAP or a subscription by the council. These are two companies, you know, making a deal together. Somewhere along the line, someone's getting a benefit out of that, and as well they should. But I think with this ability to have this open source messaging protocol deliver straight to the map, if it's approved, once we have a nice framework in place, understanding it, we might be able to kind of circumvent what you're talking about there and use more local or small data sources like a school alarm or like a state agency or a local road and bridge department or whatever, to be able to integrate data that isn't just those big partnerships with subscriptions.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern right now is there's a lot of schools out there right now, school districts that are going out and procuring without even contacting the PSAPs. So, you know, and then they're contacting us afterwards and saying, hey, we got this great technology and we want to send you this data. Well, the last thing I want to do is add it, well, we just talked about this earlier, add another map, you know, because information overload at times, you know, if you have 6 maps, well, which one are you looking at? Still, dispatcher's only one person, right?
Right.
So I guess just as we're going down this road and these paths, that might be something that we consider, and maybe as a state organization, we can actually put pressure on these manufacturers to be able to say, or these vendors to be able to say, hey, this is something that we need. We have to be able to ingest this data, because the last thing we want to do is have a school district or something like that go out and procure a great product that can't interface to our system.
And I will comment on that I believe an open source protocol like CAP is a good leveler for that. Because you can look at a company, a small company or a very large one, and go, this is not proprietary. You don't have to pay anybody for access to a license to this. I'm asking you to transmit in this format if you want to get it in front of Kansas PSAPs. And we have the benefit of having the voice that we are, you know, 97-ish% of the PSAPs in Kansas. We're there. So, you know, when we ask for that, some of them might pay attention. Of course, it is Kansas, and so we're a little small. Some of them might not. But I do think it is a good way to kind of push that issue a little bit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor the point, but if you go to open source, does that open you up for more, you know, for like cybersecurity and people like that to try to mess things up if it's open source?
It's not an open source application, so
Okay.
it's not where they would be getting in and doing anything. It's just kind of a way of formatting text so that the application knows how to display it.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Francisco.
Thank you, Mercy Francisco. So you've talked about the schools and purchasing. Is there any message the council should deliver to our State Board of Education that they could share to just say, this has happened, you know, we are suggesting that if you invest in this technology, such and such, because we have a State Board of Education and they send out messages.
I would really love to see the State Board of Education kind of lead the charge on that, so we don't have, I think there's economies of scale to be realized that would save money, and obviously integrating one vendor as opposed to 1,000, however many school districts we have, would be a great thing. And I would love to have seen the State Board of Education step up and say, here's a project for school security. You know, this is our vendor. If you're going to do a school security project, jump on board with this. You're going to save money, and we're all going to have the similar product and be able to do with that data what we want. I don't know if it's too late to do that, because I know there's a lot of districts out there that are doing those projects right now, so. Go ahead.
I just want to make a comment right quick that Rapid Deploy already has a relationship with one company for this purpose. And that company does have a footprint across Kansas. It's called Rave. But I'm sure that that's an excellent product. I'm not offering an opinion one way or another on that. I'm just saying that rather than having to say, hey, our vendor has a relationship with this vendor, maybe you should do that, we do have the opportunity to talk about a more democratic way for them to get data in. Rather than pushing them towards a specific vendor, we can push them towards a specific format. More options. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I hadn't mentioned Rave. So it is there, you know, and it's a great integration. There's just a reason I didn't bring it up as the primary.
Jerry, if I could add, we're already having those conversations with Skyline as our camera integrator, because they also, you know, they're going to be integrated into the 911 center, doing the camera feeds of the DOT cameras right now. That was part of the app project, or bringing that in and digesting that and making it a clean source on that. And we've started initial meetings on what it would look like to give a one-page document that if you're a school, a hospital, what it would look like to share your cameras. And some would even include panic buttons that turn on a camera, which Rapid Deploy has the bandwidth to do. And when I say bandwidth, I don't mean the network. I mean the ability within their system to have the agreements and relationships with those companies and standards for panic buttons. That's an easy lift. But what we're trying to do, to your part, Senator Francisco, is to create a one-page document that says it starts with the PSAP. If they're willing to have that data come in and have it presented and then share it through the app, then that's the first thing they need to do. But the second is, here's your steps and who you communicate with to start getting the right people to the table. So hopefully that helps a little bit in what you're saying is, and then communicate. And we, of course, can share that document when it's created for those to share out to whom they represent.
I will ask my State Board of Education member what they have done. Do they have a committee on security? You know, because this is a conversation. I don't want to start a program for all the schools, but I want them to know who to ask and to even say, check with your PSAP. So former Representative Anma is a fabulous member of that Board of Education, and she'll give us some good recommendations.
Representative Carmichael, or Representative Hawk.
Thank you.
Not going to live that one down.
Boy, I'd say. This is all interesting because we actually have a proposal, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but you may see it in the budget process. There's a technology out there right now that, with all these cameras in the school, if someone is in the hall or wherever and they come out with a gun, through AI, they can now see, it can identify that's a gun, and it will flash it up to whoever's the monitor, you know, whoever's kind of monitoring those, and then they can see, well, no, that's a, you know, no, it's actually a cell phone, but it's pretty good from what they say, and it would actually, and then they can automatically lock down that area, and you know, so there's
it's going to happen pretty fast, I'm afraid, in all these areas. So, and I think that's actually something that there could be some funding for on the state level this year for that, so.
All right, thank you very much. That's a great conversation. I know, Jeremy, you're kind of in that forefront of that with where you're at with your fusion center, so.
Yes.
It'd be interesting. You might be the pilot, I guess, for everyone else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have done something just along these lines at our real-time crime center that we've implemented. And Senator, I think it would be great for the state board to really start to drive this message to the schools, because this is going to expand rapidly. This is going to be the future of school safety. It's on everyone's minds. And I'd venture to say where a lot of these things kind of take a dip is when the data, I believe, can be shared. Typically, it's going to be shared. It can be shared, provided that those interfaces exist, usually. And probably many of us in this room have unintentionally fallen victim to, we buy a product. We feel as though this is what it's going to do. A school may buy this product thinking this is wonderful. It's going to send this data to the PSAP. That educational process for that administration at that school to realize, let's get there first. Let's make sure the PSAP can take it. And oh, by the way, let's make sure the vendor who's selling this can promise that whatever receiving thing we have, that interface exists, because the purchase happens, the implementation goes, and then when it comes down to time where it's, hey, why isn't this working, or how do we get it there? Well, the PSAP may not have been involved. And then you're looking at, well, there's another $20,000 bill to generate the interface on the PSAP side. So people are left thinking, no. So there's definitely a checklist, a process to go through that would be a big help. We went through it.
All right, any further discussion there? All right, Sherry, do you remember where you're at?
I was done.
All right. All right, any other questions for Sherry? All right, we'll move on to Scott, an administrator report.
Well, I really don't have a whole lot. In your council handout packet, I provided you with some photos of the build on our emergency dispatch and training center. They just about got the box completely built. They were going to be mounting that onto the truck probably the end of this week, if not then early next week. And then they'll start the build on the inside of it and getting it tuned up. Any questions on anything you saw in the pictures that you might not have understood?
That's a semi, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's straight truck, but semi-driving.
Scott, I didn't get a chance to read too much in depth on that, but how many can fit in that?
5.
5. Okay.
It'll have 5 full-time positions. We also put in a separate desk where we can pull in 2 command posts to bring it up to 7 total if we would have to do that.
Okay.
Which for really everybody but you and Sedgwick County and Douglas County and Riley County, well, actually just the 3 of you, is more capacity than they have in their regular PSAP. Right. So
amazing.
All right. Any further questions on that?
Okay. Next thing that I included in your handouts was the statistical reports that we always share. I put in the annual report for this meeting. I think those are all pretty self-explanatory, and unless you have a question, I would move on. Last thing I have, just a report on the number of reroutes that we had in December. We had a total of 6. The first one was Wichita County. They did a generator test, and their generator backfed power into the UPS and scorched it. And so we had to replace the UPS there. Next one, Horton PD had a problem with trying to log in. When the technicians arrived, the Windows splash screen was being displayed. some kind of Windows glitch. We really don't know what it was. Tiger team rebooted the workstation. It came back and everything worked fine. So really don't know what the cause for that was, but the solution was pretty easy. Pottawatomie County rerouted for their ACE migration, the migration from AVPN to ASE. Scott County had their KM switch hung up, so they lost their mouse and keyboard, and we had to reboot the KM switch, and then we were fine. Greeley County reported not having audio from the caller. AT&T dispatched the Tiger team technicians out to take care of that. The PSAP rebooted while they were en route. When the Tiger team member got there, everything worked perfectly. So I think it was probably a reboot issue, that the reboot took care of it, and had they done that before they called, they probably wouldn't have generated that call. And then Wichita County, again, was rerouted for maintenance. But that was the reroutes that we had in December.
I don't know if anyone remembers, I mentioned the last meeting, the refresh of equipment, and Scott actually threw some numbers together and what we're losing in ancillary pieces. They've replaced all the main parts of it, but they haven't replaced all the ancillary, but we're really not, as of yet, seeing much, a mouse here and there or a KVM switch here and there, but it really is maintaining a pretty minimal level.
Yeah, and it's a pretty low percentage of the devices that we have out there that are failing. With the exception of the KM, it's under 10%. The KM switches are running about 11%, so.
Director Rabb.
Scott, could you just give a quick explanation on the differences between the VPN and the ASE and the importance and the benefits of this transition? Because it's significant, but we should probably have a good understanding at a lower level for us.
Yeah, be happy to. AVPN is AT&T Virtual Private Network, which is a network that AT&T provides. And that's what we built the system on, was AVPN. ASE is AT&T switched Ethernet. That came along after our initial build, and it offered us increased bandwidth at a lower cost than what AVPN was costing us. So with that savings, we were also able to add a commercial broadband connection for every PSAP. So now we have their ACE primary circuit delivering calls. If something happens to that, it fails over to that commercial broadband circuit to carry the traffic between the host and the PSAP. If that fails at the same time, we still have FirstNet LTE as a third option to maintain that connectivity. The commercial broadband, it's locked down. The only thing that traverses that is through a security tunnel between the PSAP and the host is that host traffic. You can't go out and go to Google or do anything else on that connectivity. It's just a pipe between the PSAP and the host. So it's locked down extremely tight. But the broadband connections have already proven their worth. Before, we didn't have enough confidence in the LTE to keep them up. So when we did maintenance, we rerouted every PSAP for maintenance. We don't have to do that any longer. They fell over to broadband and they continue to operate right through the maintenance window. And we've done that multiple times and had absolutely no problem with it. So it's really a better deal. We were able to do the increased bandwidth plus the broadband. And then also as a part of the project, we changed out the router equipment for LTE. So now we're able to use FirstNet Band 14 spectrum, which really enhances the LTE connection as well. In the county seats in every county in the state, we have pretty good FirstNet coverage. Now you get outside of the county seat, it may drop off, but in the county seats themselves, we've got really good coverage. In fact, Comanche County, prior to us having the Band 14 capability, didn't have LTE backup because they didn't have enough signal to do it. But with the build out of FirstNet, they now have sufficient Band 14 signal there at the PSAP that they now have all three options as well. So, and they were the only one in the state that didn't. So it's been a really good project for really no additional money.
Yeah, one time, the former president of AT&T was going to come out and visit me, and I told him he needed to make sure he called me before he left Wichita, because once he got too close to Comanche County, he wouldn't be able to tell me that he was going to be there, and he didn't believe me. And when he got there, he realized I was right. And since then, they've done some upgrades in that area.
Hopefully there was a payphone available. I don't know. Interesting.
I have one question about the reboots, and I know this may not be something you can answer, but do you know how long it had been since those machines had been rebooted prior to that fail?
I don't know how long it had been since that particular machine had been rebooted, but typically when we have that problem, it'll have been over 60 days between reboots.
Thank you.
And you know how Windows machines are. They really don't like to keep running that long continuously without a reboot. So
All right.
that is all I have unless there's any other questions.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Tony Foster.
Yes, Scott. I know we went through a transition where we went from regular AT&T to the FirstNet boxes. Where are we at in that transition? Are we 100% now, or are we still working towards getting everyone over to FirstNet?
Yeah, we're 5 short. It's those 5 PSAPs that are awaiting the ACE migration and getting that primary circuit in, that primary ACE circuit in. All 5 of those are out of AT&T footprint, so we're having to go through other carriers. 2 of them, 3 of them are having to build facilities to the PSAP, so that obviously that takes time to put the fiber in the ground and make that happen. But again, like Sherry said, hopefully by April, we're 100% statewide.
All right. Any other questions of Scott? All right. Looks like.
Hey, Scott, can you run that video or no? That he sent to. I think wants to use your computer. I can start talking though if you want me to. While they're figuring out the technology, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We're going to present a video that we did with Sheriff Briggs, and it is a collaboration between him and Rapid Deploy, and we did that when we were at the APCO conference. And I just wanted to kind of give you a highlight of that. We're going to be doing a lot of this in the future, and there's a reason behind it. It's to communicate the program and also show the growth of the app program as it develops, because it is a developmental project. As we grow, things will change, and our media and our outreach and our stakeholder engagement needs to grow with it to keep them updated, interested, and hopefully become a partner in the future and utilize the app. So you'll continue to see, maybe, did you guys decide yes or no? Oh, he's got it? Okay. So we'll be doing it more on a granular level as we move forward with the app, but we continue to work with them on media products like the dashboard and all the graphics that are in the app. We work with those, approve those as we move forward. And their marketing team stays very engaged with us, as well as the app developers and the team and Sherry as lead, just to ensure that it works for what we're doing and it needs what we need. And they're very open to changing, modifying. They don't ever post or do anything without seeking our approval before. So it's a very good working relationship that we have with their media department and the developers. But that, I think, is going to help in our success as we continue to grow the app and we continue to communicate it. Can you show his? Oh, okay, no worries. We'll come back to that. but we'll continue to capture those moments and those videos as we move forward. I am working with and continue to work with appointments. We do have 3 openings, one right now, and one of those is the APCO representative that Becky moved out of to take this position. Government IT and the League of Kansas Municipalities has a vacancy as well. So got with Melissa with appointments. We have a path forward on how we're going to try to look at those vacancies. But we also looked at what this summer looks like with any that have term limits that are coming up. And we're going to try to get a master list. And I'll be reaching out to agencies and associations that have anybody that would expire this summer fairly soon, just to get that in motion. So hopefully we can have a seamless transition. And again, the draft legislation talks about how that moves over and what happens regarding if you take over somebody's term in the middle, and if you have a new term, it's all labeled out in there. And that should seamlessly move over with our current board and any new members based on the way the language is written. We've talked about the CISA grant a little bit, and that's a technical assistance grant that we got with the help of KDIM and the SEEK. And what they're helping us walk through is policy for the app and any of the data and information that we're utilizing with the app. And it could start with as much as bring your own device, the security of the device, how do you terminate a device if you need to. They're helping with that to help the council with their policies that they need in between, working with the app itself and what the 911 centers need, and also what the first responders need on their side to easily deploy that and use it from their level. So that has started, and we've had a couple meetings with them, and they're already have a couple templates for us to use. And these are for us to share with everyone to adopt if they choose, but and to help them as they grow the program from the operations side. We're working with FirstNet Authority, and it kind of goes to a little bit about data sharing. We've been able to share with them some call data that helps them determine kind of where their coverage is and where we may have some gaps and where they may be able to enhance that network as they move forward. We also are working with them on a year-long program where they're going to follow us, and I've mentioned that a little bit, but we've already had our first article, and it's going to reappear. But they will do quarterly newsletter updates on the Kansas program as a whole, as well as what the app looks like in development. And again, it's to garner interest. It is also to show what Kansas is doing. And the more that we partner with some of these other groups, the more return on investment on what they do and on what we do and how it's going to grow the program. So those are important relationships to continue. FirstNet Authority is also going to help us look at what that future connectivity looks like for the EMDTC that Scott told you is inbuilt. So we're going to continue to foster that relationship and grow it as the year goes through. I talked a lot about communicating in the program. One of the things I did yesterday, and I haven't even had a chance to update the team, but we've stayed in contact with KDHE, KDOT, some of the Kansas Highway Patrol. And one of the goals is always to communicate to them where we are, what we're doing, to save on investment. And you guys talked about that a little bit earlier. You know, just communicate the program. We know what they're doing, what their vision looks like. They know what we're doing. And how do we work together, collaborate, and maybe not spend dollars that somebody else is already doing something that you can share. So one of the things that was really interesting yesterday that they talked about was some of the smart road projects that they're doing. And it, you know, even to the point where as they build networks down the corridor, how maybe that may enhance our program moving forward, because they have a large project where they're working on the primary corridors right now with a network connectivity going down that corridor. From everything to they're building out, they have an annual footprint of how they're going to build out their charging stations for smart vehicles, and how all of that works and what we may be able to help. GIS might be a big player on that, on being able to show the 911 centers through the map and also through the app where those charging centers are. And it also talked a little bit about smart car information that's shared, like out of the lane, in the lane, across the center, going, if you got on an on-ramp or an off-ramp, going the wrong direction, how that may be able to communicate that real time to safety of the drivers, to be able to notify them. So I thought it was a really interesting meeting and helpful meeting to know where they're going, update them on where we're going. And also, we've committed to that there's so much going on in both programs, looking at the possibility of a larger meeting with the teams biannually, just to stay engaged on where that's going to be. And we'll look at doing those with KDHE, Highway Patrol, and some of those others, just to ensure how do we help each other and use data and share data and utilize our investment, their investment, and save in future investments that may not be able to integrate. So that was a great meeting yesterday. And I think the other thing that we talked about yesterday was Skyline, and we talked a little bit about that. That's the camera integration. We wanted to talk about how that's working. And a little bit, we went into what we're moving on next about future integrations with additional cameras, how that would look, and how Skyline sees that moving forward, since they are our sole source for camera integration if we want it in the 911 center and in the apps. Just as a reminder, we're tapping into the KDOT camera feed, one point of integration, and it's a very nice collaboration that they've agreed to and we're working with. So that's some of the things that I've been working on since the last meeting. And I'll stand for any questions if you have any.
I would just add to, I see on my notes anyway, talking about the KLATC update, and I hadn't placed that anywhere, but it's under communication, so we can talk about that just briefly. You and I hadn't talked about it, but we did it at our meeting, during our meetings this last week, because it kind of relates to the training side that's really, could include equipment training, but a basic course for dispatchers. Something that doesn't exist in the state. Everyone kind of does their own. And the council's had a lot of questions. That's not our purview. The equipment is. We're trying to integrate basically a piece where that could all be done in one place. And Representative Hoffman actually is involved with a little bit of that process. Unlike us, the Academy is trying to become not a fee fund-based entity and become under the general fund. And the reason being, those fees are very up and down. If you were the Academy during COVID, there was no tickets, there was nobody going to court. So it's a huge drop. Their fees are derived from there. Now they're looking, kind of changing that format, but they are very committed to this process and providing not only the basic side of what communicators do, but even working with the council on the equipment side of things. And Scott's had discussions with him, but money stalled. They're operating on what, $2016 essentially. So they haven't progressed a whole lot. Representative Carmichael's familiar with their facilities. They've got some nice facilities. Their administrative building is basically a double wide. It's been refurbed many times. So there is a good push there, and I think a good cooperative effort between us and the Academy could occur at some point. Michelle's been in talks with Heather Bowler there as well, just on some things that really aren't in our lane, but it's things they could pick up and provide when we get questions. Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you. We heard that bill yesterday in appropriations, and it's something we're going to move forward, with, is to move them from a fee-funded agency to those fees will still be there. I mean, they'll still be collected. It just, now they'll get an appropriation from the state general fund instead, and those fees will just go into state general fund. We've done this with the judiciary and with Judicial Council, and now now KLATC. It just, their fees are a lot of court fees that are just up and down depending on what the courts do. So, and the other thing with that too is that I mean, it's in the early stages, but I do think the KLATC is going to get some one-time state general fund money for some major upgrades to their facilities, and some things that they've been asking for, possibly an indoor training range and new facilities for housing members when you send them there. So I toured it I can't remember, a couple months ago, and I was there with the speaker, and the speaker's really excited about doing something too. So if you can get the speaker on board, truly helps. So, so yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Well, we're very excited about that. They actually have a basic curriculum that's untested, kind of per se in a box, waiting to go. But they got to have instructors, money, you know, all of those things, had equipment, all those things have to happen first. And that's what they're waiting on. And then the 2016 dollars are running out rapidly. So I think we look forward to that possibility this year as well. So.
Representative, I'm sorry, go ahead. One of the things that I was going to ask you is, do you think the language in the new draft is clear on the guidelines or the authority given to the council on required training for the technology or the system?
And I think we changed that. And I'm not sure if that was in the last draft or, because I think that was something that we missed in one of the revisions, and Sherry said something or sent me an email about it. And I believe in the last revision, we put in the language that you had sent, Sherry, because there was some language that, to make sure that there was, that was a little more clear, I think.
I just, as trainings under my direction or under my purview or contract, I just want to make sure that it's clear, because the KAR was very clear on it before, and the technology, I mean, just in layman's term, if we're giving them life-saving technology, we should ensure for our, that we're giving them the quality training they need on that equipment to, you know, to take those calls and use it. And without that language being, you know, pretty much strict or required, it would, I think, could create a liability on the council. That's my personal opinion. It's kind of like giving somebody a car but not requiring them to have a driver's license. It is a life-saving tool, and there's a lot of features to it.
So we should look at the language and see to make sure. But I think we clarified it more.
Okay,
So.
And I think okay, do you have any questions?
Oh, I was going to say, maybe the Senate can add to their bill if it's, if it's not there, because it's still under the subject of 911. And when I worked at the University of Kansas, did floor plans and numbering for the Law Enforcement Training Center. So used to go there once a year.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Michelle, appreciate the opportunity to partner through the CISA grant for the policy and procedure. Could you clarify, and this may be a little bit early for you to clarify, if an organization doesn't want to adopt the policy and procedure document that's developed, do they have to then develop their own policy and procedural document that's formalized and then accepted and approved before they're able to deploy the app?
I'll let Sherry take this one.
So right now, our intention with the technical grant is to develop two documents. One of them is going to be what I would consider to be a policy document. It is going to come before this council. It'll be a council policy on when PSAPs get access to Lightning, PSAPs and then the associated agencies under them get access, under what circumstances, and how that might be removed. That's council level stuff. The other document, though, really speaks to your question, and our intention right now is not to build a policy at all, but to build a template. So to identify those things that we believe local agencies, be they PSAP or responder agencies, need to have within their local policies, give them either recommended languages or recommended language or options, and then also include some resources for them to go research. So if they don't feel educated enough on the particular topic to decide how they want to do it, to give them some places they can go to learn more about it and make a decision, because it is very, very different for agencies all across the state. Every discipline is different. Every county is different. Every city is different. So our hope is to build that second document as a tool for locals to use, and to only have restrictions, if you will, in that council level policy that'll be before everybody to discuss.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, I would add that it's a 13-month program. It goes and grows as the development with the app. So some may be changing, or you know, there might be a light bulb moment where like, oh, we need to add that.
Sure, and that's why I prefaced it maybe a little bit too early to answer that question.
Oh, no.
So.
But I think one of the good things that's happening is that, Sherry's project managing the app, but there's also the working group that's under that. And as we move forward, the mechanism's already in place to kind of tap that working groups and utilize the information that's coming from those that are testing it, piloting it, and we have some Q&A possibilities with the platform that DASC has created managing the project to get those questions in and out answered survey-wise. So I think we're going to get some really good suggestions and templates for them, but that is on their lane and on their side, and it's just a tool for them to use to be more successful.
Good. Thank you both.
Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, I did look that up. I just in my notes, I don't have where it's at in the bill. I have to look that up, but it authorizes the board to establish minimum retraining requirements for PSAP personnel, GIS technicians, and information technology technicians with respect to statewide NG 911 call handling system technology to ensure public safety across Kansas. So that's what I'll have to look up the exact place in the bill, but that's what it authorizes you to create minimum training.
I think, in my personal opinion, I'd like it to be a little stronger and say required training, and not just to, I don't know, I'm looking across at eyes across the table, but in my opinion, before we set somebody down behind that console, they should have minimum training on the equipment.
Well, and I think that's what that says. It says mandatory.
You said PSAP personnel?
The council can create training standards.
Okay. As long as everybody's happy with it, I just want to make sure.
Related to the NG 911 system.
Okay, perfect.
The R word would not probably be too suitable.
Say that again?
Don't use the R word. That probably won't go very far.
Because it then leads to the L word, local control, and then we're in trouble again.
On the system?
I think in 19, Ed's in the back of the room. 18, 19, whenever we went through this,
No, it's on the technology, though.
Yeah,
It's on-
it
it's on
has
the-
morphed, but, originally when required training came out, we were very,
Yeah, not mandatory
opposed.
40 or 80-hour training
Yeah.
committee. I'm just talking flat out on
Yep.
Vesta, Rapid Deploy, all of those.
and I think that was essentially our concession as well. Like, I think that's appropriate. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I may, I mean, I think the bill will give just like Scott said, it'll give this council the ability to make those requirements for the learning of the equipment and things like that. And we just have to be careful because personnel is still, it's local personnel, and we just need to be careful on how we do that. So.
And the KAR will still be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Could I pitch in here quickly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Just ancillary to this, some of you may be aware of some difficulties in my county that have caused a lot of bad press for the communications center there. They've also claimed or pointed out or whatever that their dispatchers involved had met all of the training requirements of the 911 Council. And so just be aware that some people may be overstating and perhaps pointing their fingers at us where maybe it ought to be pointed in the mirror. Thank you.
Yeah, Scott and I have been in communication with some, so has Michelle. We affirm that our only responsibility is delivery of the call. The call was delivered correctly. Anything after that point,
That's all consistent with my understanding as well, but it just wanted to mention at this point that there's some people who'd like to point the finger at somebody else if a finger needs to be pointed, and I just don't want it pointed at us.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I think the added comment I would make to that is the PSAP has a lot of technology, not just what the council has. So thank you for that input. I think unless there's more questions or comments, I think we can debut with the sheriff, if you would.
All I can say is their editing is excellent. That's
So kind of leveraging what we all have in our pockets. And by the way, we did about 1,000 man-hours of ride-alongs and sit-alongs, like developing this application. Without fail, in every single ride-along we attended, when a first responder was dispatched, the first thing they did was grab their cell phone and put the location in and navigate it with their own cell phone.
I think lightning can bring a piece to first responders in the field that hasn't been seen before, with different avenues of audio, video, and location coming live to responders in the field. You can provide a level of intelligence, safety, and efficiency that they've never been able to see before. Off the field, I think provides the communicators an ability to concentrate on callers and not on the exterior data, and providing that to officers as they see it live in the field. Additionally, I think just the ability for supervisors, administrators to be able to administer and supervise off location brings a better, more efficient use of our time and our resources.
If I'm running a PSAP and I've got all my first responders running Lightning, I can decide I only want law enforcement to see the 911 call drops and the live location breadcrumb trail, but I don't want volunteer fire to see that. I've got to wait for them to be dispatched. I don't want everyone to have the same access and rights.
The fact that we're going to have a bring your own device type architecture that would allow any device coming into the theater of play can be utilized. It also doesn't require an additional expense or a change in what users are already utilizing in the field, such as smartphones or other devices. I think it helps in that the level of information that we can put in the field is instantaneous and changes as the calls change in front of us and before we arrive.
So you saw a list of features that are on there. That's where we're going or where we're at, and then that will continue to grow through this next year. So, thank you.
And to be clear, Steve in there talks about being able to allow law to see all the breadcrumbs of a call but not fire. Can't do that yet. Everybody sees the same thing. So that is on the roadmap, but that's one of the difficult things about Lightning. The development is happening very quickly. Talking about what will be soon is very different from what is now. So.
Okay, so since, excuse me, since January 1st, I've been primarily working with transitioning staff and onboarding Becky. I'll defer to her during her report on how she thinks that's going, but she came in at our busiest time of year with expenditure reporting, and she really just has hit the ground running, so it's been good. Going back to your question earlier, Chairman, about expenditures. So the Expenditure Review Committee, which does an incredible amount of work during this time of year, really between January and what I hope is going to be another good year of April, and we're not going to move into later months of the year. They meet weekly to review every single line item expenditure that has been submitted. They had their first meeting this week. They reviewed 525 line item expenditures totaling about $1.2 million. Of those 525 expenditures, Becky and I have to follow up on 79 of them because of lack of description within the entry by the PSAP. So we began work on that today, and we'll work on that until we get those answers from the PSAPs. So our hope is that we're looking to finalize and close out those that have submitted so far, about half of those within the week. The remainder have those issues to follow up on. So I would say, based on my experience last year, that we're doing quite well to date, based on our progress. So, yes. Other than that, I don't really have anything unless anyone has any questions for me.
Thank you. Obviously, I've been working on onboarding with Ellen. And now I'm questioning myself. No, I'm just kidding. It's gone great. Ellen has been great to work with. We've been friends for years and have worked in other capacities, and I knew it would be an easy transition, as well as with all of the other staff. They've all been very helpful in getting all of the logins adjusted and figuring out what I'm responsible for and that kind of thing. So it's been a great transition with working with everybody, and I'm just learning and learning every day. And I will be, I'm sure, every day from now on. That's pretty much all that I have, nothing else.
Any questions for that? All right.
Perspective, everything is green, no jeopardies and no escalations, and you've already heard all the good news. The main topic I'd like to share with you today is a follow-up of what I brought up at the last meeting, December 8th. You, the council, have 2 contracts that are going to expire this year without any renewals. The first one is for legal services. That's with Kenny Hertz Perry, and Braden's here representing his organization. The other one is the LCPA contract. By the way, Braden's contract expires June 30th. And then the LCPA contract expires on December 31st, and that's with Mainstream Nonprofit Solutions, and Kathy's here representing them. So what I shared with you last December is to hit those 2 targets, we have to start in January, and I'm pleased to report that Sheriff Briggs and I have already started that process, and I've made contact with the Department of Administration, kind of priming the pump with them. The reason I say priming the pump is D of A, particularly procurements and contracts, is understaffed, and so I'm using all of my silver bullets to get us to the front of the table. So, but there's some things that I think we need to discuss, or at least I need to make you aware of. So I'm going to tackle the easy contract first. That's legal services. Scott and I and Sheriff Briggs have looked it over, and it looks like that's going to be pretty clean in terms of using that specification and statement of work for a new contract, irrespective of whether or not we become a fee-based agency or not. So what I'm doing is my approach to these contracts is 2 what-ifs. What if we do not become a fee-based agency and we stay the way we are? And what if we do become one, and when that happens, and how do we ensure that you, the council, are going to have contracts that make sense? And so let's talk about the legal services one, because on December 8th, if you remember, Representative Carmichael shared with us that it's pretty typical for an agency to have their own legal representation as opposed to trying to reach into some group within the state. And I happen to agree with that. That's been my experience. So I made the assumption that, and this program managers are not supposed to assume anything, but made the assumption that you, the council, want to go ahead and retain legal counsel whether or not we become a fee-based agency or not, because there were no objections to what Representative Carmichael shared. So I guess just to be clear, is there any reason we should not proceed with the putting an RFP on the street for legal services for next year and for several years after that? Because we don't want to waste time if you say, no, we don't need that kind of thing. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with that RFP, the legal services RFP. Here's some general guidelines that you need to be aware of. Number one, it takes a minimum of 3 months to get a contract awarded. In the case of legal services, I think that's doable with the silver bullets that I'm using to get us kind of the front of the line. So I think we're going to, my goal is that when this council meets, I think on April the 19th, plus or minus 1 or 2 days, we will at that time be able to bring to you some good news. So let's talk about the good news for a minute, because once the RFP hits the street, then it goes behind the curtain. That's by statute. And the reason for that is that we preserve the competitive integrity of the procurement. So people can't talk about, well, who's bidding and how many bids did you get and how much was it and all that. That can't be discussed once we post it in about 30 days. I know that's frustrating for you as council members, because in April, at the earliest, no later than June 14th, we're going to come to you and say we'd like you to entrust us with awarding a contract, and we'll give you some gobbledygook that try to make you feel good, and you're going to want to ask questions, and we're going to say, I'm sorry, I can't share with you. Well, how do we eliminate that frustration? So there's a couple ways of doing that. Here's what you need to know with any procurement. There are 2 groups involved with the procurement. The first and the most important is the Procurement Negotiating Committee, the PNC. The PNC is made up of 3 people and 3 people only. One person is the procurement agency representing Department of Administration, Procurements, and Contracts. The second person is the head of the agency, which in this case is Sheriff Briggs as chair of the council. Then there's one more position that Sheriff Briggs can request appointment to. So Sheriff Briggs probably next week will write a letter to Mr. Herman at D of A saying, here's who I would like on the PNC. The second group of people are advisors, and there's no limitation on how many advisors. That's up to the discretion of the PNC. On straightforward, easy procurements, in general, it's 2 or 3 advisors, and they are that. They only offer, normally they're subject matter experts to offer, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And kind of help the PNC navigate some difficult criteria that are established by the state. On a difficult procurement, you can get up to 9 different people as advisors, because the more complex the procurement, the more subject matter experts you need. So that can vary. Again, it's up to the PNC to determine how many advisors they want. So what does that have to do with you? If you don't want to be frustrated in April and June when we bring something to you and say, we'd like your permission, Mother, may we do such and such, and you say, well, give us details. And you'll get upset with me when I say I can't. Just trust me. But there's a way around that. You can say, well, that's not good enough for me, I'm sorry. You look like an honorable person, but I still don't trust you. So you can go to Sheriff Briggs and say, I'd like to be an advisor. You could do that. Or you could even say, I'd like to be that third person. You can do that. The deal is, whoever is going to be behind the curtain must sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, that states 2 things basically. Number one, that there is no conflict of interest. So you have to establish that I can see behind the curtain because I don't own a business that's going to be bidding on this, whatever it is, kind of thing. No conflict of interest is one criteria. The second criteria is once you go behind the curtain, you can't talk about this except with the people on those two groups, the advisory team or with the PNC. They're the only people. And and Sheriff Briggs has asked me to facilitate both these RFPs. When I do the kickoff meeting, once we go behind the curtain, I said, you can't even share it in the elevator what's going on here, because I was in an elevator once and I got inside information because the people in there didn't realize that I was bidding on something, and they're talking away and I'm just saying, Lord, help me remember all these no's. I won the procurement. So, at any rate, I'm trying to eliminate that frustration. So, if you want to get behind the curtain, get with Sheriff Briggs, and we'll fix you up with signing an NDA, whether you want to be an advisor or an observer, and hopefully that'll eliminate some of that frustration. Okay, that's background. So, and we talked about that. Now, with the legal services, like I said, that's going to go fairly fast. Because it's a clean kill. I'm not supposed to say that. It's going to be pretty straightforward, and with some cosmetic changes and to make it kind of relevant. The LCPA contract is not going to be straightforward, and if you remember, at December 8th, Representative Carmichael and I did some real-time brainstorming of how we're going to do this, because if we don't become a fee-based agency, that means the contract has to say, well, you're going to do basically what we're doing now. On the other hand, if we're going to become a fee-based agency, and there are going to be different triggers in there that Representative Hoffman has made us aware of in terms of time, then we've got to construct a contract that's going to be able to be all things to all people. So since Representative Carmichael and I are fairly brilliant, we came up with this idea that, well, what we do is we can put in biddable line items. So we end up with what I call a smorgasbord, meaning it's a lot of work for the bidders. They're going to hate us. But they say, okay, we want this thing at this time. How much is that going to cost? So no matter what happens with the bill, we can, up to the last minute, we can pick and choose what we want. And during what's called the final negotiation of the contract, we put together what we need. So by the time we know if the bill is going to pass or not, then we can start constructing what that straw man of what that contract looks like. And quite frankly, even if the bill does not pass, and let's say it goes into next year for more deliberation or whatever you guys call it, then we can still do bits and pieces. But the point is, we have to have a contract by the end of the year for the LCPA. So that's one of the challenges. So there are more challenges. That's just the first one. The second one is, by statute, if the LCPA contract is going to change providers, in other words, if mainstream nonprofit solutions is not going to be or appears not to be the successful winner of the bid, then we have to go to the LCC. And so we're going to dial up Representative Carmichael to help us schedule that. Oh, Representative Hoffman. And he's and that'll happen, excuse me, Representative Hoffman, that'll happen around June. We should have a pretty good idea. So in June, on June the 14th, what'll happen is I'll come to you as a council saying, we think we know what we want to do here, and we would like a tentative approval from you to keep going. And you're going to say, what do you mean keep going? Well, Representative Hoffman's going to get us before the LCC because it looks like mainstream's not going to be successful. And by statute, we have to get there, get them to look at it and say, oh, it looks good to us, yeah, go ahead, or no, we don't want to go with so-and-so or whatever. So, and so that takes a while, so that interrupts it. That's the second challenge. Here's the third challenge, and probably the most difficult. And Scott and I had to go through this a number of years ago. If we're going to change providers, there's got to be an overlap in there. What that means is it takes 3 to 4 months of overlap where the new bidder sits down at a table and says, okay, Kathy, I need everything you got. And Kathy's going to say, all right, what do you need? Well, everything you got. No, it goes back and forth. And that takes a long time in order to extract the, if possible, all the current information so that on January 1st of 2025, we hit the switch and say, thank you, Kathy, and we wish you well, and congratulations. Whatchamacallit, you get to do everything from now. It has to be a hot cutover, and it has to work. Why does it take 4 months? Well, we got November is Thanksgiving, and December is Christmas. And with all due respect, people disappear. Critical people disappear. That's why it takes a long time. So I wanted to give you an appreciation for the fact that a lot of things, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts, and the main thing for today is Sheriff Briggs is moving forward, starting either today or Monday, working directly with establishing teams and so forth. So if you have an interest, you'll want to get with him today, probably during lunch. I think that's all I have. Stand for questions. Chair, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Randall? There's a lot of stuff. Scott.
Given the timeline that if we become an agency, that would occur July 1st of 2015 or 2025.
Yeah.
Every vendor is going to have to bid on the full package because regardless of who it is, they're going to have from January 1st until July of 2025. Would it be easier to just put out an RFP for the full gamut of all the work that the LCPA is currently doing, and then if we move to an agency, then we do another RFP, because then we have time, because we've got an existing contract, we would have time to get everything done, even if we don't change the LCP on July 1st of 25, we would have time to get another contract out for just those duties that they would have to do as the LCPA under an agency structure.
Yes, that sounds clever. And you would think that that would work in reality, and it probably won't. Here's why. Let's say I'm a financial institution, and if I know that's what's going down, I may not want to bid on a program that, okay, you're going to be doing this for a year, and then we're going to have another procurement that looks like something different for 2026 or whatever, you know. I may not bid on that. I may say, you know, I'm not in this for the short haul, you know, because I'm going to take a beating up front, lessons learned, trying to get my feet wet and so forth. That may not work. So personally, I'm not in favor of it, but we'll certainly keep that under consideration.
Well, my concern is you may have entities that would bid on it if it was just that limited piece, that when they see all the other stuff with the administrative support and, you know, contractors and all of that, they may say, no, we don't want to bid on that. So it might limit bidders rather than the other way around.
Yeah, it's plausible. It's plausible. It's not going to be a particularly pretty picture anyway. We slice or dice it. But we'll take that under advisement. Good suggestions. I'm not real sure.
Representative Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are you able to write it in a way that, I mean, my assumption would be, and shouldn't make assumptions, but my assumption would be that if we do become an agency, you know, those, the cost, LCPA cost might be a little less than it is right now because right now they're handling contracts, you know, contracted people. So is there a way to make it so that changes, the cost changes, and so we're not locked into a set cost for them, you know, handling contracts, and then in, like say, in about a year and a half or whatever, then all of a sudden they're not.
Yeah.
And they've got another, what, year and a half at least of contracts. So is there a way to do that?
Yeah, there is, in my opinion, yes, Representative Hoffman, there is a way of doing that. Structure, let's pretend that we're not going to use the 2 RFP two-step process that Scott Eckberg just suggested. I'm not discounting it, I'm just saying I hadn't thought through that yet. So let's say we go with a master contract, all things to all people, no matter what the legislature does or doesn't do. We can structure it in such a way that it says something like this. We want you to continue managing independent contractors through 2025. I'm trying to keep it simple. After that, you don't have to worry about it anymore. We're going to handle it as a small agency, in which case that cost, remember, I'm going to do a lot of line items, so we say, we don't want you to manage independent contractors anymore. They're going to be gone. Thank you very much. And so that piece comes out of it. So now the price drops down. So, and that will be negotiated. What I mean by that is you, in coordination with the PNC, will make a decision. We want to go with blank, this company. And we say, okay, we move forward with what's called an intent to award. So we sit down at the table and we say, okay, here's what happened with this House and Senate bill. So what we're going to do is we want this, and we don't want that, and we want this, and we don't want that, we want this, and this, and this. So in the final contract negotiation, there'll be periods of performance and what we want done during that time and what the cost is during that time. So the contract will actually have triggers built into it at certain times. That's the theory, Representative Hoffman. Well, whether or not I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't tackled this before. I've had similar things with DOD, but it was more predictable than what we're trying to accomplish here. But I think it can be accomplished. But that's, in theory, what we're going to do.
Marcy Francisco.
Thank you. Do you have estimated time that this second RFP would be going out?
When it's
The
going to be
LCPA, when it would be
posted?
posted.
Yes, Senator Francisco, we hope to post it no later than February 14th. for the reasons I said we got hit like the LCC. You know, if someone were to say, no, we're going to do a sole source procurement, and I don't really want to open that can of worms because that's painful too, but if, let's say we did that, then it becomes a moot point. It's going to go to mainstream, and we're going to go negotiate something, and life goes on. But I can't assume that. So since I can't assume that, and it may go to a different firm, then in June, I have to dial up Representative Hoffman and say, we need the LCC to agree to award this to Hoochmajiggy, and they're going to deliberate on it and come back, and then we have all the transition stuff I talked about. So that's why it needs to be in February when we post it. Both of them, both RFPs are going to be posted in February. Great questions. Any more? Thank you.
Can you field any more? That's the question you had. You've walked us through quite a bit. So any other questions for Randall? All right, if not, we'll move on. Old business. I don't really have anything on tap for that. Any new business? New business.
I don't know if any of you all watch Travis and Jason Kelsey's podcast. They have new news, new business. This is not a big deal. Within the last week or so, the Kansas Highway Patrol and Superintendent Smith has appeared before various committees in the legislature talking about their needs. One of their needs is to build a new dispatch center that is in a hardened and secure location. Without getting into what they have now, I hope we find them some money, Kyle and Marcy. But, oh, good, good. But the point of it is they told us that presently they don't have any backup for their dispatch. And I know we've worked on MOAs and we still have most of them taken care of. Now I've got Sedgwick and Shawnee, but where are we at? Do they have an MOA? Are they out there on an island? Are they interested in being able to pass off services? I get this feeling I'm touching a third rails, but
I don't know if it's a third rail, but they don't answer 911, plain and simple. Not a call. Could be, but they
I have
don't.
had meetings with them regarding it,
Okay.
Representative, and we've shared the data that we have and the capabilities that we have, even to the discussion of having at least one console. So they would have all of that, and so they're aware, and we can open the lines regarding that specifically. But I would say the answer to your question is they are an island, and there is probably no MOA for. And
none in the office. Obviously, there's none now, but it doesn't look like that's maybe what they're looking for right now.
It's kind of disparate worlds.
Yeah. And I agree with you. They don't, I just realized, yeah, they don't directly answer 911. They do have their own systems out in various places where they can receive direct phone calls, but it's not a 911.
And I think their biggest aspect would be radio connection, which.
Say again.
Radio connection would be their biggest issue. With the system they utilize around the state KSIG system, they can set someone down at any similar systems location and beyond.
Good enough. The superintendent raised the issue, and I was sitting there, I was wondering, well, wait a minute, what are we doing? And
Very similar to our system
I got
now. They would simply sign into that radio system, and then they would have their screens, their calls, their talk groups.
Okay.
Not that it's completely that seamless, but it would be similar.
I'm not proposing we do anything. I just needed to find out what the status was. Thank you.
Thank you. And if KDOT moves forward with over-the-air programming, then the EMDTC could be, they could reprogram our radios over the air so they have all of the KHP talk groups that they use for daily operations, and we could give them 5 positions of radio connectivity. If something would happen to their center or whatever, and they had to look for that. So it would be another use for that.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But they're, and I may have missed it, we were sitting here talking about some appropriation stuff here, but they're different though, because they don't receive calls from public. They're just simply a dispatch of their officers. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, other than their star 67 or whatever
47.
that special number is.
Which is essentially an admin line.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that the PSAP's at an interest, though, when they take a 911 call and they transfer it because it's, a major highway or that they would be able to share the data with them. Because right now we're back to pencil and pen and they're saying it over the phone and the KHP dispatchers are, so there was that interest for that integration to share that real time.
Yeah. And if they were to do that, they could then integrate their admin system into the Vesta so that if they had to evacuate their center, we could put them at a Vesta workstation wherever, either in the EMDTC or in a PSAP or one of the backup centers. And they would have not only 911 access, but access to their admin system as well. So those star 67 calls direct dial into the would be available to them as well remotely.
So yes, there is a backup.
Rightly or wrongly, the Kansas Highway Patrol has a long and proud tradition of going their own way. Thank you.
Good point.
All right. Any further? Marcy.
Thank you, Sheriff Briggs. In terms of new business, we talked earlier about having a group of people meet just to talk about the counties. I remembered that it is during legislative session, so I would have time this week at 4 p.m. on Monday or 10:30 on Wednesday. And also, I thought if there was the chance right after this meeting to just brainstorm 15 or 20 minutes to know what topics people might be interested in, I would have a chance to look at that. And I will probably be asking Gail to send out a Zoom invitation. I'm assuming that's the way we would handle this. So.
Sheriff? Jerry Daniels has a question.
Jerry, go ahead.
Oh, I did. We kind of changed the subject from the KHB discussion. As a trooper for almost 20 years, I was just going to add some comments, but that's okay.
They were covered, apparently. Yes.
Okay. I just want to add from an informational aspect, which is both the sheriffs know from the law enforcement standpoint. KHP does get their response calls from the Star 47, which is Star HP. But most of the 911 access, as the sheriffs know, most troopers have a county radio in their vehicle. So majority of calls do come from the county or local PSAPs that trooper's working in. So even though KHP dispatch is their own entity, they do work hand in hand with counties, but most troopers have a direct link to that local PSAP via county radio. Thank you.
All right, Sherry. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks. I just wanted to kind of touch on to that because we have had one PSAP ask, would it be okay to add the local trooper in Lightning? Because they are, very closely related, and absolutely. That's a PSAP by PSAP decision. Part of the discussion that we had about Lightning originally at the time of purchase and part of what is in the contract is a desire to see a statewide view where state responders could be. But that is a future item. Right now, if a local PSAP considers an individual trooper to be somebody they want to see on there, they can absolutely have them added as a user in Lightning. And I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that was supported because it has been asked.
All right. One last thing.
Michelle.
Probably.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I'm following Representative Carmichael, New News. I see Josh Michaelis in the back from Rice County, and I just kind of wanted to talk about, we talk about a lot of technology and features, and we do make a lot of, there's effort that goes into determining the features that we add, and do they make sense? Do we need them? Do dispatchers want to use them? And one of the things that came on as an added feature for Radius, the map, was map markup. And here recently with the storms and all the amounts of snow that they had, Rice County experienced over 30 vehicles off the road. And they used that new feature to be able to determine like each vehicle had been stopped and checked and then marked on the map. And one of the discussions we had with DOT yesterday was like if they could see that, their plows, their trucks would not stop. So I just wanted to share with you, that's new news, but that's also good news because we see it being used and used in ways that are valuable and safety for everyone. But it saves them the time not having to get out and check that vehicle. They could just move on. So they did a press release and rapid deploy forward that nationwide. So.
All right. Any other new business?
One question for Sheriff.
Eric Harper.
So regarding the trooper, if they did have that, is that geofenced to just see it when they're in their county?
Way it works right now, if, let's say you add a trooper to your PSAP's environment, you'd be able to see that particular trooper all across the state whenever he was logged in, but only you would see them. So even as they cross over to your neighbor's county, because your PSAP is where they had permission, your PSAP is where they would be visible.
Would that zoom my map out if he's in Salina and I'm in Shannon County?
You'd have to go look for him.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further? All right. Any council members have anything else they want to bring forward? All right. Most of the council meeting agenda, draft bill, we talked about the draft bill status. We do have a meeting. Next meeting is at 9 Friday, April 19th. I believe that will be just a web conference, so we won't be able to enjoy everyone's beautiful faces in person that time, but it'll give us a little break from the drive. And so I really appreciate everyone making the trip that's been able to and putting up with these in-person meetings. But I think we've had some really valuable interaction and learned probably more than we do just being on WebEx. So I appreciate everyone being here. I'm sure Gail says, I think she gave me the nod, and lunch is outside and will be available. So with that being said, and food on the line, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Marcy Francisco.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Jonathan York, I'll second.
Jonathan's hungry as well. Any further conversation? All right. Gail, could you please take a vote?
All right. Motion to adjourn the meeting. Brandon Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Rick Billinger. Jack Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative John Carmichael.
Aye.
Thank you. Tony Foster.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Marcy Francisco.
Aye.
Thank you. Eric Harper. Thank you. Jerry Harrison. Scott Hillbrink.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative Kyle Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Jeremy Rabb.
Aye.
Thank you. Doug Ritter.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan York.
Aye.
All right. Everyone's ready to go to lunch.
All righty. We are adjourned. Thank you.